Hey, what's up, people? Welcome to my review and in depth analysis for The Last Jedi. Now, I tried really hard to be fair and balanced with this review. Why? Because I feel that The Last Jedi has a significant amount of more artistic merit than The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. I tried to keep an open mind, listening to my fellow colleagues who feel like this is one of the best Star Wars films since The Empire Strikes Back. And I can acknowledge that there is some profound stuff in this film. And I'm going to talk about this. However, at the end of the day, this film is 20% profound artistry, and the remaining 80% is just incoherent, inconsistent, poor storytelling. And I really tried. I really tried to give this film a fair chance to maybe change my initial reception. And I've changed my initial reception. However, at the end of the day, I can't recommend this film. I can't recommend this film. And it doesn't matter how good that little portion is in this film because it is totally eclipsed by the absurd remaining 80%. And I just feel like things like Admiral Holdo and that Poe subplot are just unforgivable because of just how overwhelmingly stupid it is. And it's worse than anything in the prequels. And we are definitely going to dig into this. So, this review is a little bipolar. But the reason for that is because I did try to give this film a second chance. I did try to have an open mind with the artistry that exists in this film, right? But there's just too much bad in this. It's not like the prequels where it's like 50% good, 50% bad, as far as like the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and I could kind of just suck it up and still enjoy it. I can't because the things in this film that are bad are truly, terribly awful. And I can't endure it. I can't sit through the entire duration of this film without stopping it in disappointment or feeling upset because of how terribly written the story is. My main issue that I have with this film is the Admiral Holdo and Poe subplot, which I feel was just pointless and ridiculous and just totally fallacious in the way that it was conceived. I have no idea what kind of message was trying to be conveyed with this subplot, and we'll get more into that later. And also, just the film is a bloated mess. The subplot involving Finn and Rose, it's just way too long, it's way too much, and they go on this side mission and they fail. And even though they fail, I understand that the point that Rian Johnson is trying to make is that they inspired that child that is holding the broom at the end of the film. So it's like, even though they failed, they were still able to inspire this kid. And I get what the message is trying to be conveyed. I get what Rian Johnson is trying to say. However, it was just too much. And it takes away from those very powerful moments that we have with Luke, Rey, and Kylo. This film is at its best when we are focusing on Luke, Rey, Kylo, and Snoke. It's almost like an entirely different movie. It's like you have this movie in here that's like Star Wars. And then you got this other film that feels like a Disney Channel made for TV movie, wannabe sci fi movie that's just really corny. It's like I'm watching The Descendants or something from Disney Channel. And I'm really talking about Rose and Finn's subplot. It just felt really lame up until when Finn fought against Phasma. That was the only time that it actually felt like, oh, okay, I see the point here, but did we really need to go on this big, long, bloated adventure that amounted to very little besides inspiring that kid at the end? But this film does have some very powerful moments, and I have found that I can enjoy certain aspects of this film even though this story goes in an entirely different direction that I would want it to. I really, really would have liked to have seen something different in regards to Luke Skywalker's return to Star Wars. However, Rian Johnson, he inherited this setup. He inherited it from J.J. Abrams' Force Awakens. You have to remember, in The Force Awakens, it was stated that Luke Skywalker felt responsible because one of his students basically destroyed his Jedi temple, and Luke felt responsible when he went to the first Jedi temple and he's gone missing, and he felt responsible. That was the setup right there. All the Jedi are dead again. But now that this whole sequel trilogy is done, I sit back and I really look at The Force Awakens as the movie that is responsible for every single thing practically that I don't like about the sequel trilogy. It really was all there. It's all Force Awakens' faults practically because they're the ones that came up with this setup. Look, Leia's not a Jedi. All the Jedi are dead again. Luke is responsible for Kylo. Luke is responsible for the Jedi not existing anymore. He's a failure. So for us to be mad at Rian Johnson because they made Luke a failure, he made Luke a failure, like no, he didn't. It was J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan who made him a failure. They're the ones that wrote this story. And you know what? Some of these story elements are actually from George Lucas's original story treatments. So if you look at some of the Art of Making books, and you could see the progression of how this film was made, and you could see even before this story or Star Wars was sold to Disney that there was artwork relating to George Lucas's treatments. And basically, George Lucas was going to have a Luke who is like, who is going to be like Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. Basically, he's kind of gone crazy and he's in isolation and he's on the island with the first Jedi Temple, and a new student was seeking him out, and hopefully he was going to inspire Luke to come back to the fight and things of that nature. So that was already there in George Lucas's treatments. So to the extent of how it mirrored A New Hope, I don't think it was going to be anywhere near as to what The Force Awakens did. This is why I put greater blame on Force Awakens rather than George Lucas's story treatments. Because even though we'd like to believe that Disney discarded George Lucas's story treatments for the sequel trilogy in its entirety, that's not true. You can see that they took some of his ideas and they kept them. It probably got deviated way off by the time we got to the end of Last Jedi. But the basic setup, the beginning, was there. And The Last Jedi has more in common with George Lucas's story treatments than Force Awakens does or The Rise of Skywalker. Now, the point that I'm trying to make is that J.J. Abrams is the one that I think decided to kill all the Jedi. Because if you go over these storyboards that were being created when The Force Awakens was being created, and you could see how some of George Lucas's ideas ended up staying with the Disney trilogy, you could see that when you look at George Lucas's story treatments for the sequels, that there was more than one Jedi. The Jedi were still around. In fact, there was a Jedi killer, and they had Darth Talon in there. And there's one storyboard where Darth Talon seduces this Jedi and kills them. So basically, there was Jedi still around, and they were being killed by Darth Talon, and maybe it was Kylo Ren or Luke's nephew. But point is that Darth Talon was there, and there was a Jedi killer, and they were killing Jedi, plural. And to me, that's really the big thing that I dislike about the sequels is that, ah, man, we're back to the Jedi being extinct again. Like, I can understand if you destroy Luke Skywalker's school, but at least have a handful of them. There's so much character opportunities there, but I digress. And the point that I'm trying to make is that Rian Johnson inherited this mess, right? So I'm not going to be entirely upset with him. And I like the fact that he kind of gave J.J. Abrams the middle finger for copying A New Hope. What am I talking about? I'm talking about having this whole like the Emperor wannabe Snoke character, right? At first, I was kind of upset that, actually, that's an understatement. I was furious that Snoke got killed without any backstory. But now, when I look at it, I'm like, good. He shouldn't even existed in the first place. He's a dumb character. As much as I love Andy Serkis and his great performance as Snoke, because Snoke was a badass in this movie. His performance was outstanding. However, it's redundant. He's another emperor. He shouldn't even been here unless he was just like Darth Plagueis or something, but we know they weren't going with that. And yes, maybe Rian Johnson should have explained his origin, but the point is that who cares because we're mirroring the old trilogy. Let's get rid of this worthless piece of crap right now. So he kills him, right? And I'm like, good. Give JJ the middle finger. And I know there's people out there like, how can you do that? You didn't run with JJ Abrams' story. He set it up. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, J.J. Abrams' movie, the story he came up with, aside from maybe Finn being a stormtrooper gone rogue, it sucked. It sucked. I'm glad that he did that. Another thing that I'm glad about and that I feel like he's conveying in this film, Rian Johnson, to The Force Awakens or to J.J. Abrams, is this whole the Jedi need to be around for balance to happen. In the beginning of The Force Awakens, the old man says to Poe, without the Jedi, there could be no balance in the Force. And immediately I was like, what? Like, hold up. Wait a minute. Like, I'm like, do you even know what you're talking about? Because I thought Anakin brought balance to the Force, but I guess here we are. Because of J.J. Abrams, all the Jedi are dead again. So I love it in this film. And I think this is one of the most powerful moments in the entire Star Wars saga. It's literally one of my favorite moments. As controversial as this film is, with all that aside, this scene, the scene where Luke tells Rey that to say that the Jedi die, if the Jedi die, that the light dies is vanity. Can you feel that? To me, that's like one of the most powerful messages that has ever been conveyed in any Star Wars property. And it really gets me thinking, and it's true. And it's even reflective of religions in our real world. It's like there's this vanity that you have to be this, you have to be that religion in order to be close to God. But to me, it's like, look, the Jedi are not the Force. Sure, they follow the Force, they teach lessons of the Force, and they meditate on the Force, and they work for the good of the Force, the light side. However, they are not the Force. And to say that if the Jedi die, the light dies is vanity. And that, to me, that really illuminates this whole fallacious thinking that the Jedi have always had since their inception. And I thought that was a very profound and brilliant moment in the film. And really, that scene calls to me, man, because I thought it was so powerful. And to me, that scene is basically telling J.J. Abrams, like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like literally that scene is telling that old man at the beginning of Force Awakens, like, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. To say if the Jedi die, the light dies, it's vanity. I love how Rian Johnson is practically telling that character at the beginning of Force Awakens that message. And he's telling JJ that because I don't think JJ understands what the hell he's talking about. And now we got this profound moment and we can start thinking deeply about Star Wars as we know it, right? And also, another thing that I feel like this scene is trying to convey, And some Star Wars fans may not like this, but I really think that Rian Johnson with this scene is trying to convey that the prophecy of Anakin restoring balance to the Force is kind of dumb. I never was a fan of this whole prophecy story element that was in the prequels. I never liked it. Why? Because if Anakin really is prophesized as the chosen one, then that means he became Space Hitler before he was able to rid the galaxy of the ultimate evil, which was the Emperor. And to me, that's just a dumb story. That's a dumb prophecy. That's like saying, like, oh, before Jesus dies on the cross and forgives the world for all our sins, he's going to be a homicidal maniac and be responsible for the genocide of millions of people. It's like, what kind of prophecy is that? What kind of chosen one is that? That's why I like when Luke Skywalker says this. To say if the Jedi die, the light dies is vanity, because I feel like he's speaking directly to the prophecy, which I feel was ridiculous. And I know George Lucas is insistent that the original 6 films are about the prophecy and that Anakin is the chosen one. But to me, I just think that's dumb. I really do. I grew up with the original trilogies before getting introduced to the prequels. And, I got love for some of the prequels, but the prophecy element of that is not, I don't have love for that. I try to ignore it as much as possible because it's just dumb. It's just dumb. And I like that Luke said that because it really resonates with me because of that. It's like saying, like, look, prophecies, chosen ones, the Jedi, that's not the light. And to me, it's profound. That's profound stuff right there. And there's just other things that I love about how Rian Johnson just practically gave the middle finger to Force Awakens. I know when Rey is trying to pass off that lightsaber to Luke and Luke throws it over his shoulder, everybody was upset, or a lot of people were upset, rather, me included. But now, when I sit back and look at the whole trilogy, I'm like, especially Force Awakens, again, Force Awakens, this whole emphasis on the lightsaber, Luke's lightsaber, it's so important. It's Luke's lightsaber, the lightsaber. And then here we come to Last Jedi, and I see Luke just look at the lightsaber, man, and toss it over his shoulder. And I don't think this scene was trying to be funny. See, I think people misunderstand something. They think that maybe Rian Johnson was trying to tell a joke here, but I don't think he's telling a joke. I think what he's trying to say is like, look, dude, this lightsaber is not the Force. Lightsabers and lightsaber battles, they're not the Force. And I think we as an audience have been spoiled by the prequels because they have these epic lightsaber duels. And yes, they're visually stimulating and they're really cool and intense at some moments. But at the end of the day, that's not what the Jedi are about. The Jedi are about peace, they're about passivity, they're about defense, not aggression, not lightsabers. They're about the Force, man. And I think that when Luke tosses that lightsaber over his shoulder, that's the message. And J.J. Abrams was like, look, the lightsaber, man, it's Anakin's lightsaber. It's Luke's lightsaber. Oh my God, look at it. Isn't it so cool? This thing, this epic artifact. And Luke throws it over his shoulder like, so what? This is not what Star Wars is about. This is not what the Force is about. It's not about lightsabers. It's about something deeper, something more profound. And at first I didn't get that. I was upset. I was like, is this a joke? Hold up, man. You had this whole epic setup at Force Awakens and now you just toss it over your shoulder. What's wrong with Rian Johnson? But again, now that the trilogy's done, the sequel trilogy, dude, I look at Force Awakens and I'm like, man, this is the movie that started this whole mess. This is the mess right here. This is where the fallacy is. It's in Force Awakens, not in The Last Jedi. Rian Johnson is trying to tell J.J. Abrams, like, look, this whole emphasis on this lightsaber thing, you don't get it, man. Star Wars is about the Force. Star Wars is about something deeper and more profound than lightsaber battles and lightsabers. And I really appreciate that now. Now, That's not to say that Rian Johnson doesn't confuse me at times. So, Rian Johnson, on the director commentary, he states that Luke is on the island because he has to do what he couldn't do in The Empire Strikes Back. And I listened to that, and he also talks about this in the documentary that's on the bonus disc. And I'm confused because without Rian Johnson saying that, to me, as an audience member, without listening to any commentaries or extra material, just based solely off the movie, it appears that Luke, he's on that island because he is ashamed, because he wants to die. That's why he went to the island. He even says, I came here to die. He wants the Jedi to die, right? However, Rian Johnson says that he's there because he has to do what he couldn't do in The Empire Strikes Back, kind of inferring that he is there to be passive because that's the true Jedi way, to be passive, let the universe sort itself out, right? And I'm just kind of like, I think that's a total misunderstanding of that scene from The Empire Strikes Back, because the reason why Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi wanted Luke to stay and not go rescue his friends is because they wanted him to finish his training. It had nothing to do with being passive, or they weren't like, Luke, don't go rescue Han and Leia because the Jedi way is to be passive and not interfere unless balance can be maintained. So I'm like, where's he getting this from? I think he totally misunderstands that scene from The Empire Strikes Back. And in fact, there was a deleted scene from The Last Jedi that touches on this significantly. And I'm very, very grateful that it was deleted, because I think it would have been embarrassing, because it totally shows that Rian Johnson did not understand what The Empire Strikes Back was trying to convey with that scene where Obi-Wan and Yoda are asking Luke not to go and rescue his friends. And thank God that scene got deleted from The Last Jedi. And even though Rian Johnson says on the commentary that that's kind of like the heart of the motivation as to why Luke is staying on that island, it's not conveyed in the film. I really think, as much as I'm trying to go a little bit out of my way to give Rian Johnson some credit for his artistry, at the same time, there is definitely some fallacious thinking on his behalf, some misunderstanding of the Star Wars saga. However, I appreciate him for trying to bring it back to the spiritual. I really do. But the point is, I really think that there are some fundamental misconceptions in some of his ideas in regards to what he was trying to convey. However, I didn't pick that up, and I still don't pick that up when I watched this movie. When I watched this movie, I'm like, Luke is on this island because he's ashamed, because he wants the Jedi to die, and he wants to die. I never got this whole like, oh, he's there because that's the Jedi way. Let the galaxy suffer. He can't act because he can't restore balance, because that's just absurd. So he's gonna let Star Killer Base annihilate the New Republic and just be like, oh yeah, the Jedi sitting back and watching trillions and zillions of people die. Oh, that's the Jedi way. Yeah. Sorry, Ryan. I don't think you know what you're talking about. Even though I'm trying to go out of my way here to give you a little bit of process, you definitely don't know what you're talking about when it comes to that. Now, back to this deleted scene. I'm glad the deleted scene was cut, because leaving it in, not only would it show that Rian Johnson misunderstood that Empire Strikes Back scene or what the Jedi are about, because the Jedi have gone to battle many times, right? They haven't just sat back and been like, oh, be passive. Think of all the lore, think of all the expanded universe, think of the movies, the prequels, etc., etc. In fact, when Luke said, "I can't kill my father" in Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan was kind of he got into this whole resignation kind of attitude, like, "Oh, well then we failed." You know, but it's just so he's actually like encouraging a violent act, right? So again, but another thing that deleted scene that I'm referring to, which is the caretaker scene or caretaker village scene, is that it would have messed up the Rey and Luke relationship. It would have made it even worse for those that don't like it to begin with. But for me, just the end of the film when Rey feels Luke kind of transcend into the Force, kind of like Elijah on the chariot going to heaven, right? Uh, from the Bible, right? For her to feel that with that deleted scene being in there, because in that deleted scene, so let me just break down this deleted scene. In the deleted scene, after Rey says, "I won't fail you," like Kylo did. I won't fail you. Something like that, right? In the theatrical film, in the main movie, The Last Jedi, after she says that, the scene cuts and we move on to a different scene. However, with the deleted scene in there, after Rey says that, "Kylo failed you, I won't." There's a noise outside. Luke and Rey go outside and they see like these ships. And Luke basically tells them that they're raiders or pirates and that they've come to ransack the village of the caretakers. And then he tells Rey, you feel that burning passion inside you that tells you to go and rescue them and to fight the raiders. The Jedi books in the temple say ignore that. Act only if you can maintain balance. Rey doesn't listen to Luke. She goes off and she tries to rescue the caretakers. However, when she barges in to the village, they're all dancing and having a party. And the point Luke was trying to make was like, look, what you just did, that's not the Jedi way. The Jedi they're not going to help you out. And what he literally says is, what the resistance needs is someone that can act upon those feelings, not some failed husk of a religion. And Rey is upset. She's furious, in fact, and she says, "I believed in that legend of Luke, but now I no longer do." And it's kind of a real nasty exchange between two of them, and she storms off. And that's literally like the last genuine moment that they had together, other than when they have their little scuffle over the Kylo Ren recollection as to what happened between Luke and Kylo. And for me, like, for Rey to be at the end of the movie when she feels Luke pass away and be like, "Oh, I felt Luke pass away, but it was peaceful." For me, that would be unearned if this deleted scene was in the movie because their relationship ended on a nasty note, right? But with the deleted scene removed, it basically ended with her saying, like, "Kylo Ren failed you, I won't." So it's a little bit more of a positive thing going on here, despite their little exchange when she wanted to find out what exactly happened to Kylo Ren. But to leave the deleted scene in there, it just makes their relationship very sour. And then it would have made that moment at the end of the movie where she feels Luke transcend into the Force just feel unearned. I'm also grateful that the deleted scene was removed because if it was left in, it would have made her motivation for going into the dark side cave being that she was upset with Luke, right? That Luke pushed her away. They had that nasty exchange. Things got sour, and she went into the cave almost out of spite. And I kind of don't like that. With the deleted scene removed, it seems like she goes into the cave because the cave called her there. You have to remember that when she was basically going through that lesson with Luke, the cave was calling to her. And she says, "It's calling me." And then Luke says, "You went straight to the dark and you didn't even try to restrain yourself." So I feel like her going into that cave was like the dark side seducing her. The cave called her after Kylo Ren kind of confused her. He kind of generated those feelings of, who are my parents again? When he said, "Kill the past. It's the only way that you're supposed to be who you were meant to be, or something along those lines. See, when Kylo Ren says that, he's talking about killing Han. There's some people out there who say that the message of this film is to kill the past. And to me, they totally misinterpret that scene. Kylo Ren is talking about killing the past because that's the only way you can be who you were meant to be. He's talking about killing Han Solo. That's what he's talking about. It's not the message of the film. Like, to think that way is awful. What? You think that's a good lesson? You think that's good? Like, you don't get it. But anyway, once Kylo Ren says that to Rey, it kind of generates those feelings like, oh, who are my parents? And then remember, the dark side cave was calling her. She goes into the cave, and then she's let down because the cave doesn't reveal to her who her parents are. It leaves her feeling empty, and then Kylo Ren manipulates her, and then she foolishly believes that she can turn him, only to be fooled later on in the film when it turns out that Kylo Ren killed Snoke not because he wants to be good, but because he wants to be the number one bad guy now. And I think that this is a good thing because Rey being naive and being susceptible to manipulation, it makes her less of a Mary Sue. It makes her less of this perfect character because she's making mistakes, right? And I think that's good for her character. And again, the point that I'm making is that leaving that deleted scene in there would have just totally changed the motivation for her to go into that cave. And I'm glad the deleted scene is gone because she needs to be manipulated by the dark side because she's naive, not because Luke is an asshole. So that's why she needs to go into that cave because she's being manipulated by the dark side. We need to give her a character flaw, man. And the point I'm making is I'm glad that the deleted scene is gone. Also, the whole reason why she feels alone and opens herself up to connecting with Kylo is because she shouldn't have gone in the cave, which was why Luke reacted the way he did to her. Like, man, you went straight to the dark and you didn't even try to resist yourself. Like, you're dangerous, right? And he's right. She went into the cave and now she feels alone. And now she's letting Kylo Ren manipulate her. And now she erroneously believes that, well, if Luke won't help, then Kylo may be our only hope. And Luke tells her, like, man, this is not going to go the way you think. And that's another slight towards The Force Awakens, right? He's basically saying, like, look, this isn't going to be the original trilogy again. Kylo Ren is not going to be redeemed. This isn't going to be Darth Vader redeemed again. Like something JJ would do, which he did in Rise of Skywalker, which is so boring. So I kind of like that because there's these subtle little, I guess you want to say, rebukes at what JJ was trying to do, which is basically copy the original trilogy. Now, another thing that inserting that deleted scene would have done is that it totally would have changed the inspiration for why Luke opened himself up to the Force. So if the deleted scene was in the film, Luke would have opened himself up to the Force after so many years. The reason why he would have done it was because basically Rey kind of rebuked him, right? They had that nasty exchange, and she was like, I believed in the legend of Luke. I was wrong, right? So then Luke is kind of like, oh man, and then he opens himself up, and then he feels Leia. But with the deleted scene removed, he opens himself up to the Force because Rey inspired him when she says, Kylo Ren failed you. I won't. And I like that better because it's just more positive, right? It makes the relationship, what very little one that they have between Rey and Luke, just more positive, right? And it's just a better feeling. Luke opening himself up because of being inspired, because of hope, rather than because he got rebuked because he's being an asshole, right? And another reason why I don't like the caretaker village deleted scene is because it infers again that nonsense that the Jedi are passive, that they should never act unless they can maintain balance. despite this contradicting all the lore, all the books, the Clone Wars TV show, where they basically went out there to fight in order to right the wrongs, right? But also, it's just, you, to me, the Jedi, they failed. Their downfall was because they served the Republic and not the Force. That was their downfall. It wasn't that because they chose to fight in general. And again, I think that's something that Rian Johnson kind of misunderstands, despite having some nice artistic messages in this film. And another deleted scene that I found fascinating and that should have been put in the movie, probably the only deleted scene out of the entire batch of deleted scenes. This deleted scene should have been in the movie, and if it was in the movie, I would bump it up practically half a score, right? And I'm talking about Luke mourning. Luke mourning Han Solo should have been in the movie. It was such a great performance from Mark Hamill. And that's another reason why I've come to appreciate some elements of this film, because Mark Hamill's work is just excellent. The same way that I can appreciate Terminator 3, because that was Arnold Schwarzenegger almost at, that was coming at the end of his prime. And he does a good job. And here I'm seeing Mark Hamill deliver this excellent performance, despite it being something that I wouldn't have gone in that direction as far as story. But it's still a great performance nonetheless. And the scene where he's mourning Han should have been in the movie. It was such a great scene. It was such a great performance. And I can't for the life of me figure it out why Rian Johnson removed it. Like, even when you hear his commentary on the deleted scenes, I feel like it was such a foolish move. So you're going to tell me that you can have all this bloated nonsense involving Finn and Rose at the casino, and this subplot that it's just confusing between Holdo and Poe, but you couldn't give me 20 seconds of Luke Skywalker mourning his best friend. To me, that's like a crime, man. For the life of me, if this 20 seconds would have been in the film, I would have liked it so much more. But I digress. Now, another thing that I want to touch upon is the concept of emotion. So, the theme of this film is about failure and all that, and we're going to go into greater depth in as far as that analysis later on in the review. But an important thing about this movie is emotion, right? And emotion is the problem. It's the problem as far as Force users go. Because as long as Force users exist in the Star Wars galaxy and have emotions, there's always going to be individuals who use the Force for evil, right? Or for their own gain. There's always going to be evil wizards and good wizards. So the point being is that this battle between good and evil is always going to exist. So this ties in to the message of the film being that we have to learn from our failures and things of that nature, right? So the good versus evil concept is always going to exist, and this is why you should never give up, right? Now, the way it was executed in the film was a little juvenile, right? And it really could have been executed better. But my whole point is that I acknowledge this theme exists, and I also take away this whole concept of emotion being a real issue, and how the Jedi always have to fight. There's always going to be that fight, right? That fight against evil. And that there's not going to just be this glorious day where evil is vanquished from the universe, from the galaxy, forever and ever, right? That exists in George Lucas's ending, right? Because he was going for the whole fairy tale thing in Return of the Jedi. But for this film and for the Disney films, it's totally more nihilistic, right? It totally is. And it's just something that I got to acknowledge, and I acknowledge that right now. Now, another thing that I'm going to touch upon later on in the film is that a lot of people say that Luke went to go kill his nephew Ben, and he didn't really go to kill his nephew, right? He went to go confront him. He invaded his privacy when he read his nephew's mind. He got scared because, again, of emotion. He saw the destruction of everything he loved, and then he pulled out the lightsaber in a moment of shame, right? So I'll touch upon that later and how the different points of view of this incident, it's just kind of like a misunderstanding. And I compare this with Akira Kurosawa film called Rashomon. So I'll get into that later. One thing that I appreciate about this film is that it mirrors the King Arthur legend. And what I'm talking about here is the confrontation between Luke and Kylo Ren is very similar to the confrontation between King Arthur and his nephew Mordred. Now, in the King Arthur tale, King Arthur has to confront Mordred because he was away from his kingdom battling Lancelot because Lancelot slept with his wife or had an affair with King Arthur's wife. And while he was away, his nephew took over his kingdom. Now, his nephew is also his son because his sister manipulated, or I guess you want to say tricked King Arthur into laying with her, into having sex with her, and she did this as an act of revenge against King Arthur. So when King Arthur comes back to his kingdom, he sees that his nephew's there and that it's his son, and they have this confrontation. And I see similarities to this in The Last Jedi with Luke versus Kylo. Because supposedly Kylo Ren's creation is due to Luke Skywalker's grievous sin, which is that he had a moment of weakness to murder his nephew. So both nephews, both their creations, were the cause of the mythological hero's sin. However, in the King Arthur tale, King Arthur's sin was not intentional. He didn't intend to have sex with his sister. He was tricked. However, Luke was not tricked in trying to have that moment of weakness or trying to kill his nephew. He was just being prideful and invasive of his privacy. But coming back to the whole King Arthur analogy, I do appreciate the attempt. I do appreciate that. And a lot of people like that this mirrors the King Arthur legend because they feel like it is a completion of Luke Skywalker's story. And, I can see the merit in that belief. That's a better rebuttal to like this film, or a better rebuttal against those that don't like it to like it, because I can see it clear. And I love King Arthur. I love the legend of King Arthur. Now, Luke, this is my rebuttal against those that like this whole King Arthur comparison. This is my rebuttal. Luke Skywalker's mythological journey, the legend of Luke Skywalker's story should be its own thing. It shouldn't mirror King Arthur. I don't want Luke Skywalker's story to mirror King Arthur's. I want Luke Skywalker to be Luke Skywalker. You know what I'm saying? That's what made the original trilogy and Luke Skywalker such an important and such a powerful piece of mythological storytelling, was that it was new. There's no story out there about a son redeeming his father. There's no story out there about a son who believes that his father, who commits mass genocide and who's like the most evil person in the galaxy, being redeemed by his son. There's no story like that. This was unique, man. This was unique stuff, and that's what made it so potent, and that's what made it so powerful, and that's what made me feel it so much, and that's what made it resonate with me on an emotional level, was its uniqueness. This is the story of Luke Skywalker, and I don't want it to copy King Arthur's. Like, Luke Skywalker's story should be Luke Skywalker's story. It shouldn't be like King Arthur's. I appreciate that it's drawing from other mythological tales, as the rite of passage and the hero's journey does. But at the end of the day, Luke Skywalker's story was unique. This whole son redeeming his father characteristic of the Luke Skywalker myth is unique. And if we're going to continue Luke's story, it should continue to be unique. I'm not saying it can't draw inspiration from other myths, but it should continue to be unique. Now, coming back to how I have more appreciation for this film because it has more artistic merit than the other two films in the sequel trilogy, another thing that I appreciate is that this film took, or I believe it did, I'm pretty sure it did, but it took inspiration from the Akira Kurosawa film Rashomon. And we all know that George Lucas drew a lot of inspiration from the Akira Kurosawa film Hidden Fortress. So I can commend Rian Johnson for doing this. And what does Rashomon do? So if Hidden Fortress took the whole R2-D2 C-3PO lost in the desert thing from the characters in Hidden Fortress, what Rashomon does, Rashomon is the story about a rape. There is a crime committed, a rape and a murder, and all the characters in the film have their different points of view, and they tell their different points of view, and at the end of the day, each point of view is an entirely different story. And at the end of the film, the truth that emerges is very profound. And I appreciate the implementation of this inspiration into The Last Jedi, because the points of view, the different points of view here in The Last Jedi are the night that Kylo Ren killed all of Luke's students, which is the night that Luke had that moment of weakness. So you have the point of view where Luke says he had a moment of weakness. That's Luke's point of view, which is that he had a moment of weakness. Then you have Kylo Ren's point of view, which is he wanted my power. Then you have Rey's interpretation without the details from both sides, which is that simply Luke went there to confront him because there was a darkness sensed in him by Luke, and that Kylo turned on him. So Luke lied at the end of the day because he was ashamed that he had that moment of weakness in which he tried to kill his nephew. So not only is Luke on the island because he thinks the Jedi need to end, he's also on the island because he's ashamed that he tried to kill his sister's son. So Luke is hiding because he's ashamed too. But back to the whole Rashomon thing. I really think that was a nice implementation right there. Again, I want to emphasize, I see more artistic merit in this film than I do in Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker. And another detail that I can see that's taken from Akira Kurosawa films, or an Akira Kurosawa film, is Ron. Snoke's throne room totally reminds me of a scene from the film Ron. Now, another thing that I appreciate about this film is that it has a message. Force Awakens has no message, at least not an original message. It's the whole calling of the hero's journey. Rey is ignoring the call to the hero's journey, and then she finally accepts her parents aren't coming back, and then she takes up the lightsaber, and boom. That's not original. We're biting off A New Hope here. Only a little bit of things change. Luke took up the hero's journey in A New Hope, and that's what Rey does in Force Awakens. She takes up the hero's journey. The only thing is that the whole sitting on that island, deluding herself that her parents are coming back, that's the unique thing about it. But to me, it's not unique enough to call it art. You can't sit there and lie to yourself and tell me that Force Awakens is not a ripoff of A New Hope. Now, Rise of Skywalker, man, you want to talk... Rise of Skywalker is like McDonald's. It's the McDonald's of filmmaking to me. I don't know what the hell the message is there. Kill your parents? You can choose your family, so kill your parents? I don't know. That's a whole different review. Anyway, it's garbage. But at least in The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson tries to convey a genuine message through the characters. And that message is the lesson of failure. Now, even though I appreciate the attempt, I don't think he succeeded in all fronts, and it got a little messy. Now, failure. Everyone in this film fails, and that's the message. Now, some people think that the message is, whatever, kill the past, but that is BS, man. And we're going to talk about that later. And I'm just going to throw it in there right quick. When Kylo Ren says kill the past, he's talking about killing his father, Han Solo. That was the only way he could become what he was meant to be. And that's why he's saying that to Rey. Because Rey asked him, why did you kill your father? And then he goes into this whole thing and then he says, kill the past. Like, whoever thinks that, like, really has no comprehension for what the hell's going on in movies. That's not the message of this film. Kylo Ren was telling Rey that because he was saying why he killed his father. He wasn't telling, he was telling Rey, forget your parents, do what I did. I killed my father, kill the past. That's not the message of the film. Anyway, the message of the film is failure. Yoda says, we are what they grow beyond. Learn through failure. So, all the characters in this film fail, which is a real controversial presentation because I think a lot of people went into this film and they didn't want to see their heroes fail. They didn't want to see their favorite characters fail. I didn't want to see Luke fail, but he's not even the only one that fails. Every single character in this film fails, at least from the protagonist side. Now, like I said, sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's just, at the end of the day, you're like, what the hell? So let's just get into this. Poe fails when he sends Rose and Finn to the casino because ultimately he causes the death of 360 resistance soldiers. And I'm giving him a little bit of leeway because at the end of the film, when we look at the Millennium Falcon, I don't even think there's 40 people in the Millennium Falcon. It looks like there's only 20. So he's responsible for the death of 380 resistance soldiers because they say there's 400 survivors. All right. So Poe, he fails. And he also fails in staging his mutiny against Admiral Holdo. But he learns to see the bigger picture instead of charging into a situation once Leia reveals to him after she comes out of her coma and then she re-encounters Poe again. And she says this half-ass juvenile explanation. I mean, again, I see what Rian Johnson was trying to do, but it's executed in such a juvenile manner that it's laughable at how pathetic it is. You know, how is Poe supposed to see the larger picture if Admiral Holdo isn't going to tell him the plan? And again, plus the message is so pathetic and juvenile in its delivery that it makes Poe look like a retard. All he cares about is blowing stuff up. You know, when in the scene when Leia tells him, like, oh, she thought that preserving the light was more important than being a hothead or something like that. And then Poe has that look on his face like, really? And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, man. Like, this is so juvenile. You can't honestly tell me that this guy who's been in so many combat situations, who's an adult, wasn't able to grasp this. I mean, it's so juvenile. I can see the same message being executed in such a more mature and intellectually calculated manner and believable, but it's just so like, oh my God, man. Instead of making it look like a genuine lesson that Poe learned, it just makes him look stupid. Because it's like, all he cares about is blowing stuff up. Like at the very beginning when he cuts off the communication, when Leia says, come back, let's get out of here. And he's like, no, he could take out the dreadnought. When I saw that initially for the first time in the theater, I was like, and he turned off the radio and he cut her off. I was like, what? Because I went into this movie expecting Poe to be a responsible soldier like he was depicted in The Force Awakens. I actually liked him in Force Awakens. I thought he was a cool character. But now all of a sudden, all he cares about is blowing stuff up. And he says it. Leia slaps him in the face and is like, you gotta learn that it's not just about blowing stuff up. And then Kylo Ren attacks and he says, permission to get in my ship and blow things up. And then when Finn and Rose are trying to explain the whole what they gotta do, sneak on Snoke's ship to disable the tractor, he's like, oh, so we get on and we blow that one up. It just, the thought of it just pisses me off because it's like, why you gotta make him stupid? Okay, you want him to learn through his failures. You want to show that everyone learns through failure. All the characters fail. I get it. I understand. Why you gotta make it look like he's stupid? Like he's so stupid. Somebody like Poe would never have been a commander in the first place. Like when Leia demotes him for losing all the bombers, he never would have been in that position in the first place if he was like, let's blow things up. I didn't get that from him in The Force Awakens. Let's blow stuff up. Let's blow stuff up. Like he's supposed to be Leia's most trusted soldier. And the way he's depicted in this movie, he's like an idiot. Like I lost all respect for the character. What a waste of Oscar Isaac's time. He's such a great actor. He really is. This crap is beneath him. I feel sorry for the guy, man. And I don't blame him for wanting nothing to do with Star Wars after this. Because they asked him in an interview, will you come back? And he was like, no way, man. Like, no. So, moving on. Another person that fails. Again, the whole point of this segment is that the message of this film is failure. And I appreciate the attempt by Rian Johnson, but it's a mess. Some of it works better for some characters. Some of it doesn't work for others. In regards to Poe, it's laughably bad. So Rose. Let's talk about Rose. Rose fails in disabling the tracker on Snoke's ship. And what's really important for me, and I think that a lot of people overlook this, is that she fails to see her own ignorance and naivety by generalizing everyone on Canto Bight as war profiteers for the First Order, when in actuality, they also sold weapons to the Resistance. So without them, the Resistance would have been squashed a long time ago. She also fails to see that by saving Finn, she nearly doomed the First Order. Now, one major thing that has changed for me since the initial release of this film when I viewed it and now is that I don't hate Rose as much as I used to. I think her heart is in the right place, but she is ignorant and she is naive. But the reason why is in the film. She is blinded by the trauma she endured in her childhood when her home was shelled by the First Order to test their weapons. So this right here explains why she generalizes those individuals on Canto Bight as all being bad people. You got to remember, she says it's the worst place in the galaxy filled with the worst people or something like that. She says that to Finn. And when we get there, it doesn't look like that. I mean, you got people of all races. You got people there of all different types of alien species. There's no way that every single person there could be a bad person. And that was the whole point of the Benicio del Toro character, showing Finn that these people also sold weapons to the good guys, quote unquote, and the bad. So again, without these terrible, quote unquote, people at Canto Bight selling weapons to the resistance, they would have been demolished a long time ago. So the same people that Rose despises are the same people that help her cause. They help her cause because they're the ones that sell the resistance weapons and ships and all the stuff they need to fight against the First Order. Now, what ultimately makes this little message fail for me, he shows it to Finn. Like, I mean, think about that. Think about Rose. This could have been done great. Rose generalizes everyone at Canto Bight as war profiteers for the First Order. She's blinded by her hatred. She's blinded by the trauma she endured in her childhood when her home was shelled by the First Order. And as a result, she's become ignorant because she's just blocking out the truth because of her trauma. And she's naive. She's generalizing. Oh, these people here are terrible. I hate them all. They're war profiteers for the First Order. And then imagine, you got that moment in the film. And then DJ, Benicio del Toro, shows Rose, oh yeah, these people also sell weapons to the resistance as well. What do you think about that, Rose? That would have been very interesting to see how that would change her outlook on things. That would have been so much better than Benicio del Toro showing that to Finn. Now, I know what Rian Johnson was trying to do was he was trying to show that to Finn to kind of make things ambiguous, to confuse him. Should he choose a side? Should he just be on his own? Whatever, because that's Finn's story arc in this film. But I think it would have had so much more potency if DJ had shown Rose this. It would have been like a shock to her, I would think. So again, Rose fails at disabling the tracker, and she fails to see that she is blinded by hatred. And she's generalizing. And she's basically blinded by the trauma she endured in her childhood when her home was shelled by the First Order. So that's how she fails. Now, Finn also fails in disabling the tracker and finding the code breaker. But, I think what Rian Johnson was trying to do at the very end of this film by showing that kid with the resistance ring was that even though Finn and Rose failed at doing all that bullshit trying to find the tracker, trying to disable the tracker and find the code breaker, was that he inspired the kid at the end. Finn's story arc was him deliberating whether he should live free and not join the resistance or the First Order and just be on his own, or should he join the resistance. And ultimately, we see that he joins the resistance. And I guess he went from caring solely about Rey to siding with the resistance. But, it's a mess because you go and you watch Rise of Skywalker, and what the fuck? All he cares about is Rey in that movie, too. So it's like, I don't know, man. There's a story arc there, but it doesn't mean it's a good one. I've heard proponents for this film be like, well, the writing in Last Jedi is not that bad because each character has a story arc and each character has to learn a lesson. And here it is. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but the lesson is juvenile. And it makes, instead of making the character look like they matured, it makes them look stupid. It makes them look like, okay, you graduated from the mentality of a 5-year-old to the mentality of a 10-year-old, but you're supposed to be 25. That's how the themes in this movie are executed, in my opinion. Now, I understand that these films are geared toward a younger audience, but come on, man, that's just a poor excuse for crappy writing. Do not underestimate the mentalities of young people, man, because young people are able to understand mature themes. Trust me, those films that young people like Back to the Future, the original Star Wars trilogy, even the prequels, man, the themes are more mature. They're there for the action and for the characters, but the themes resonate across all generations. And to do that, you got to make something that appeals to a universal point of view. You can't just settle for less and write this stuff like it's intended for a 5-year-old, man. You just can't. Now, Holdo, and this is one that I feel like should have been fleshed out more and is really bad in its execution, and that's Holdo fails as a leader. She's a failure as a leader. I don't care what anyone says. She is a shitty leader. She fails as a leader by not communicating to her subordinates. Never mind Poe. She kept the plan secret from everyone except Leia. Why? Holdo fails as a leader because she didn't even communicate to any of her subordinates what the plan was. She kept it secret all to herself, and then they try to send her off as some sort of hero with that whole kamikaze crap into the Snoke ship. Like, nah, man. Like they try to make her into this hero. Like, when I initially saw the movie, I thought Holdo was like a secret agent for the First Order. I thought she was a traitor, because I just couldn't understand why she was keeping the plan secret from everyone. I mean, Poe had half that ship mutiny with him against Holdo. And I just don't understand, like, why? Why? What was the point? What was the point in doing that? I mean, all she had to do was be like, Poe, I'm not going to tell you anything because you are a major letdown. The deaths of our bombing crew are on your shoulders. And as the new commander or the new admiral of this ship, I am banishing you to your quarters indefinitely. And you just keep him in his quarters indefinitely. And then she tells everybody else on the bridge, the whole crew, what the plan is. And then things would have been fine. And then when Poe wants to stir crap up and he's like, man, I want to know the plan. Let's stage a mutiny. Everybody's like, dude, nah, man, you're just a hot-headed idiot. We know the plan. We're carrying it out. We understand full well why Holdo's doing what she's doing. You need to go back to your quarters because you are an idiot. But if they did that, there'd be no movie. All right, so that's Holdo. And again, I hate how they try to send her off like she's some kind of hero at the end. It was stupid, man. She's not a hero. She's an idiot because she didn't tell anybody the plan. She is not a hero at all to me. She is the worst Star Wars character ever created, in my opinion. She is worse than Rose and worse than Jar Jar Binks. I can't stand the sight of her. And I'm going to talk about Holdo a lot more later. But I still want to continue on focusing on the message of failure in regards to the characters. So, Leia fails too in this film. Leia fails at getting anyone to come to her aid in the galaxy. When they finally arrive on the planet Crate and they finally send out the communications to get aid, no one responds. So Leia failed right there. Now Rey, she fails too. She fails in trying to turn Kylo Ren to the light side. She thinks that she can replicate Luke Skywalker's legend by turning Kylo to the light side like Luke did to his father, and she is wrong. She failed. And even Luke tells her, this is not going to go the way you think. And she refused to listen to Luke. And she failed. At least in this film. Because then in the stupid Rise of Skywalker, they completely undo this. And she's able to turn him. So the whole point of this failure thing for Rey was completely pointless. This film was completely pointless because of Rise of Skywalker completely undid the lesson here. So I just find that to be hilarious. Now, Kylo also fails in turning Rey to the dark side and joining him, or whatever, starting a whole new order, I don't know, whatever. He fails, and he also fails in defeating Luke. And we don't need to get into Luke Skywalker. We know he's a failure. We've been going on about it for nearly an hour here. So, yes, the message of this movie is failure. It is not kill the past. So, even though this message, which is conveyed through the main protagonist for the most part in this film, is present, and I can appreciate the attempt by Rian Johnson, its execution is done very mediocre in some cases, but nevertheless it's present. And I'm just trying to say that Rian Johnson at least tried to convey a message. He at least tried to convey art, and that is something that Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker did not. They are not art. And I'm just going to say it. The Last Jedi is the best movie in the entire sequel trilogy because of this. Now, in regards to the opening crawl, I felt that it was a complete wasted opportunity because essentially it tells us what we already know and just recaps The Force Awakens. Now, unlike every other opening crawl to this saga, the opening crawl was always utilized to convey to the audience events that took place off screen. But since this film takes place literally right after The Force Awakens ends, it's just a wasted opportunity. I mean, they could have utilized the opening crawl to explain something that we don't know. Like who Snoke is. How did Kylo fall? Leia, hid the fact that she was Vader's daughter from the Republic and from Kylo Ren, which is explained in Claudia Gray's book, Bloodlines, which, if you like this sequel trilogy, go ahead and read that book because it basically explains everything that needed to be in Force Awakens and in Last Jedi, in my opinion. But back to my point. My point is, they could have used the opening crawl to explain things that we don't know as the audience. I mean, and sure, I don't need the opening crawl to go into this elaborate Wikipedia backstory about who Snoke is or how Kylo Ren was seduced by the dark side. But just one sentence can explain so much. So much. Like you could say who Snoke is in one little sentence. You could say a former ally of Luke Skywalker seduced his nephew, or because Leia hid from the Republic the fact that she was Vader's daughter, so and so happened. It's just like the whole opening crawl is pointless. Every single word. Now, the film didn't have to literally start when Force Awakens left off, and this is the first film in the entire franchise that actually did that, and I think that was a mistake. Because if you pay attention to the continuity between the end of Force Awakens and this film, and I'm specifically talking about when Rey's handing off the lightsaber to Luke, when she's doing that in Force Awakens, the emotion of the scene is entirely different than it is in this film, The Last Jedi. In The Force Awakens, the look on Rey's face is like one of sadness. She looks like she's about to cry, like she's pleading through the expression on her face, for Luke to come back to the fold, to come back and train her and to fight on behalf of the Republic and her friends, her sister, etc., etc. But in The Last Jedi, she literally just walks up to him, puts it in his hand, takes a couple steps back, no emotion on her face. No continuity whatsoever. It's like Rian Johnson didn't even bother to watch The Force Awakens. I mean, that is such a huge mistake. And again, I don't think that the film should have literally started when The Force Awakens left off. It could have opened with Luke training Rey. That would have been fine. I don't need to see him take the lightsaber. But we all know that Ryan had to have his little scene where Luke tosses the lightsaber. In retrospect, I feel like J.J. Abrams wasted everyone's time. He wasted the audience's time, and he wasted Rian Johnson's time, because when Rian Johnson came to this project, he looked at J.J. Abrams' ideas and was like, what the hell is this stupid crap? Another Emperor wannabe? Kill him off, etc., etc. Things like that. But the problem with that is that once you've made your bed, you have to sleep in it. And I understand Ryan's displeasure towards some of J.J. Abrams' ideas. I do. But you gotta realize that this is a trilogy. The story is already being told, man. You can't go back. You can't reboot. And that's the problem with this trilogy. Each film takes a dump on the ideas of the previous film. And I don't want to hear any comparisons between the original trilogy. There's some people out there, commenters, that say that, well, the original trilogy was made up. Lucas made it all up as he went along, using examples such as making Leia Luke's brother in Return of the Jedi, making Vader Luke's father in Empire Strikes Back. And to me, that's just a total overreaching and total fallacious rationalization, basically trying to say, well, the original trilogy was made up as it went along, so why can't we like the sequels? Well, dude, the sequels didn't make anything up as they went along. They basically tried to start over with each subsequent film. It's entirely different. I really wish, again, that the film had a time jump, that the movie hadn't started right after The Force Awakens. It could have opened with Luke training Rey, but we all know that Ryan wanted to explain why Luke, quote unquote, walked away from it all. And we got to remember that this part of the story was laid out in Force Awakens. Han Solo says Luke felt responsible for the deaths of the Jedi students and that he walked away from it all. So we know that Rian Johnson had to explain why Luke was on that island. But it was J.J. Abrams that put him on that island. And I don't like the reason that Rian Johnson came up with. He could have totally come up with something new. Like, say for instance, Luke was on the island at the first Jedi temple because he was trying to come with some special connection to the Force, or trying to find some way to defeat Snoke. And he was utilizing esoteric knowledge or esoteric teachings, esoteric lessons in the Force that were located inside the first Jedi temple, and he was trying to discover a way to defeat Snoke because he was so powerful, whatever. You know, but there was just so many different avenues creatively that Rian Johnson could have took. Now, in regards to the opening battle, I kind of enjoyed it. And I know the physics are not too good, but come on. After Starkiller Base, can we really complain about the Jedi bombers being so slow, and when you apply logic and rationality to it, that it's entirely implausible that these things could be effective because they're so slow? I mean, come on, man. After Starkiller Base, which was the most ridiculous thing in the whole franchise for me. I mean, come on, the sun is being destroyed. They're like, oh, we need to hurry up. Poe says this in Force Awakens. We need to hurry up. The sun is almost gone. And the Starkiller base is going to basically launch its lasers and destroy the resistance base or the planet that the resistance is on. But when you think about it, if you destroy the sun, all the planets in that solar system are going to be destroyed through cataclysmic events. That right there for me was just stupid. It was beyond stupid. But again, physics in Star Wars has always been implausible. Really. I mean, think about it. Laser swords, it can never happen. Never happen because a laser goes on forever. And I know right now that there's some guy on YouTube that's making lightsabers, quote unquote, like real life lightsabers. But it's not a laser. The guy's wearing a backpack and it's like pumping fuel into the lightsaber hilt. And it's like, no, it's not a laser sword. And think about it. There's also sound in space in these movies. I mean, that's not proper physics. And also the way the ships move, the way they maneuver, and turn and all that stuff. Like, that's not how it would work in space. But think about that. Without that, it would be boring. The scenes wouldn't be exciting. We need Ben Burtt's sound effects to make it feel like like it's Star Wars. And we need the motion of the ships to move like they would on a planet with an atmosphere because it's exciting. So I'm not going to complain about this opening battle with the bombers. Now, in regards to the comedy, like the whole Yo Mama stuff with Poe and Hux, I'm a little indifferent to it. However, I totally understand how it comes across like you're watching Spaceballs and how people could be, have a disposition towards it because it feels out of place. I understand. Totally. But let's not forget Jar Jar Binks and C-3PO. And plus, Hux was never taken serious by me since Force Awakens. The guy always came across like a petulant child given too much authority. Even though the actor that plays him is a great actor and he's been in so many films where he has just delivered an outstanding performance, they totally do a disservice to him by characterizing this Hux character like he's a spoiled little brat and he's ineffective in everything. Hux sucks. So I wasn't immediately like, oh my God, they're making Hux look like an idiot. How dare they with this Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of humor, because the guy always was incompetent to me. I wasn't offended by that. Now, in regards to the Dreadnought, I thought it was cool that they included that in the film. It totally was like a throwback to me for the Thrawn trilogy. Like the Dark Force Rising Dreadnought ship. So I really enjoy that. However, the actor that commanded the Dreadnought ship, that dude should have been Hux because he seems like a real threat. He feels like a real military officer, commander of a ship. That guy should have been Hux. If he had played Hux, I would have taken the Hux character a lot more serious. Now, there is some funny stuff that I felt was delivered really good. And I really like when Leia tells C-3PO, get that nervous expression off your face. I thought that was funny, really. To me, that was like really good original trilogy style humor. I really like that. I also enjoy the Resistance theme that John Williams came up with. It reminds me of something from Indiana Jones. Now, the whole strategy for this battle is perplexing and not in a good way. And all I'm going to say is this. Why didn't the First Order just blow away the main transport ship and not the base? I mean, the base isn't going to go anywhere. The Dreadnought ship is pointing its lasers or whatever, its cannons at the base, when you got the transport ship sitting right there, filled with all the Resistance soldiers that are about to leave. And what the hell does the Dreadnought ship do? It shoots the base. It's like, dude, the base ain't going nowhere. And then after they shoot the base, they're like, oh, aim for the resistance transport ship. Oh, how long until the cannons are ready? 10 minutes. I mean, I was just like, oh my God. It makes the First Order look so stupid. But you know what? It's not the First Order that's stupid. It's Rian Johnson's writing that's stupid. But anyway, now, again, I mentioned this when I was talking about how all the characters failed. Poe is an idiot, and it's unfortunate because I really enjoyed his character in Force Awakens, but Rian Johnson turned him into a moron here. Both he and Admiral Holdo, another idiot, are responsible for the deaths of 360 resistance fighters because both were incompetent and stupid. Now, a question that I ask myself in regards to this scene is if Poe is going to outright disobey Leia when she says come back to the transport ships, and then Poe cuts her off and he goes ahead and he orders the bombers to attack the dreadnought ship. Why didn't Leia just leave him behind? Like, okay, he's subordinate, he's not listening to me. I'm not going to risk the lives of my resistance fighters just because of this one idiot. If I was her, I would have took off. I would have been like, screw him. Bye. Leave him alone in his little X-Wing. And let him die on his own trying to fight the dreadnought ship all by himself. And this leads to an entirely different question. Why didn't Leia inform the bombers and everyone else not to listen to Poe? She obviously outranks him. Don't tell me that she can't communicate with the other resistance pilots. I mean, it makes no sense. I enjoyed the scene because it's high octane action and a nice little space battle. But again, when you apply logic and reasoning to this scene, it's stupid. It's beyond stupid. Nothing makes sense. It was like Rian Johnson made this film based on a first draft. And another maddening thing to me, a thing that just drives me insane, is that so many critics of the prequels ripped apart those movies, the reasoning and the logistics behind them, and call them utter trash, and that George Lucas is a terrible writer. Give me a break. This little 10-minute opening sequence alone is worse than anything in the prequels when we apply logic to it. Right there. There you have it. Princess Leia easily could have said, don't listen to Poe. This is the supreme whatever of the resistance. It's Leia. She's the general. Don't listen to him. He's being subordinate. He's not listening to me. Once he gets back, he's going to be court-martialed. Whatever. She outranks Poe. And you damn well know that she has the means to communicate with all the resistance pilots. It just makes no goddamn sense, man. Now, in regards to Finn, man, they really did Finn a disservice in this film. I had mixed feelings about Finn initially in The Force Awakens. He had moments where I really liked him, man. And he also had moments where I was like, what the hell are they doing? Do they want me to take him as a serious character? Or are they trying to turn him into a Jar Jar Binks bumbling idiot kind of character? It was like they couldn't make up their mind. And I really hate how in the end, at the end of the day, when this trilogy is done, the only thing this guy Finn gave a crap about, when you think about it, was Rey, a girl that he just met. He hadn't even known her for a week. And I mean, look right here. When he wakes up out of the Bacta suit, the first thing he says is, Rey! I mean, that's it. That's his like main line of dialogue in all three of these films. Rey! 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 Oh my God, dude. Doesn't this dude give a crap about anything else? And I know that they incorporated that into the story arc for this guy. And I appreciate the attempt. on behalf of Rian Johnson. I appreciate that. But I mean, it felt like in Rise of Skywalker, it just went back to him just caring about being with Rey. I really don't like that his first word is Rey, and as soon as he wakes up, he falls off the bed like a dumbass and walks around leaking bacta fluid like a dumbass. All this loser cares about is being with Rey, simply because she quote unquote looked at him like no one ever had. It's so lame. Also, there's no repercussions for getting his back sliced by Kylo Ren. I mean, I know it's wrong for me to expect these movies to do what I want them to do in my mind. But if it was me, I would have had this dude been like paralyzed from the waist down due to his injuries and have to learn to walk again. And he has post-traumatic war syndrome, and he has to learn to live with his injuries. And by the end of the movie, he confronts Captain Phasma. You know, something with balls, man. Like, come on, this shit is so lame. No repercussions for this guy. All he cares about is Rey. He goes on this journey with ignorant ass Rose, only for them to fail on their mission. It just left me wanting so much more for this character. And they really, really did John Boyega a disservice here, man. Because basically his character is so fucking lame, man. I mean, and they tried to go for this whole, like, diversity. He's a black main character. BS. But it's like, come on, man. Mace Windu and Lando Calrissian and even Captain Panaka were way cooler than Finn. Like, I never met anybody, whether they're a kid, a teenager, or an adult, that's like, my favorite character is Finn. This Halloween, I want to be Finn. Oh, gotta get those Finn action figures. Who's your favorite character in Star Wars Battlefront 2? Finn? Like, give me a break, dude. Like who would want to be a space janitor whose whole story arc is about chasing a woman around the galaxy? That's it. I mean, it's like they totally went out of their way to make Finn a lame character, man. It sucks, dude. Now, all the scenes with Mark Hamill are outstanding performances. These scenes are why you watch the movie. Whether you agree or not with Luke Skywalker's characterization in this film, Mark Hamill does an outstanding job. And his scenes are easily the most interesting. And his scenes are why this film is basically the best one out of the sequel trilogy. Simply because Mark Hamill is in it and he gives an outstanding performance. And again, his performances were very artistic, even though I disagree with Rian Johnson's characterization of Luke. But to see Mark Hamill portray his version of the character and to see Mark Hamill's performance, it really is a captivating performance, and it really is compelling, and I can't help but want to engage my attention whenever he's on screen. And also, the cinematography on Ahch-To is beautiful. All the scenes on the island are gorgeous. I only wish that the story was better, that the characters were better. But as far as Mark Hamill bringing his A game to this film, and as far as the cinematography, I mean, it was gorgeous. And it's the reason why I keep on wanting to like this movie. I really do. But at the end of the day, I can't. But there is something charming about the scenes with Mark Hamill and just the scenes on Ahch-To in general. And again, Luke throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder was a callback to the whole, the Force is a spiritual thing used for knowledge and defense, not for attack. And we got to remember that J.J. Abrams is the one that placed this fallacious importance on the sword, but what's important is the heart of the wielder of the sword. So I just had to throw that in there right quick. Now, more things that I just don't understand in regards to this film is like, why can Rey understand Chewie but not Luke? I mean, Luke is the one that's been with Chewie. They've been friends for so long and been through so many adventures. And you're going to tell me that this girl that just met Chewie, all of a sudden, she's the one that understands him and she needs to translate for Luke in order for him to understand Chewie? I'm just here like, dude, like, why? I just don't understand why. Why did Rian Johnson sit down and be like, okay, the character of Rey is going to be the one to translate to Luke what Chewie says, because Luke doesn't understand Chewie. He wrote that down. Why? Now, cutting out Luke mourning Han was criminal. And I said that already because it makes him look like he doesn't care. And I'm just throwing that in again because now I'm reviewing this in sequence. Now, when Rey approaches the tree, you can hear the Jedi code being recited very subtly. And that's a thing I appreciate because we're diving into the lore. Now, I love the set design of the tree and the Jedi temple that's built into the mountain. Again, the scenes on Ahch-To are beautiful. They are the scenes that make me wish that I could love this movie, man. They really are, man. And now, in regards to the scene where Snoke admonished Kylo Ren, Andy Serkis gives an excellent performance. And I love the explanation that Rian Johnson came up with, basically giving an explanation for why Kylo Ren lost to Rey. His spirit was broken for killing his father. I also like the fact that he got rid of the mask because he's just a Darth Vader wannabe. And without the mask, he feels more like Darth Caedus or Jason Solo, you know. And this is Rian Johnson telling JJ that his ripoff of A New Hope is garbage. Get rid of the mask. Boom. Get rid of this Emperor wannabe Snoke. Kill him. You know, at first I was pissed off by this because I felt cheated because it's like we introducing all this stuff only for Rian Johnson to take a dump on it. But in retrospect, who could blame him, man? J.J. Abrams is such a plagiarist that now, in retrospect, I commend Rian Johnson for doing that. But the problem is that this garbage shouldn't have been introduced in the first place. And Rian Johnson backtracking, it is indulgent. It's indulgent. And like I said, once you made your bed, you got to sleep in it. You can't go back because now when you look at the trilogy, the story is too aware of itself. It's two directors giving the middle finger to each other. And it really breaks the suspension of disbelief for the audience, for me, because I know that Rian Johnson is implementing these scenes because he's basically saying, J.J. Abrams, man, like this was a shitty ass idea. Get rid of it. You know? So, again, Rian Johnson backtracking is indulgent, but at the end of the day, it's really Kathleen Kennedy's fault. Kathleen Kennedy, she's the one. She's the producer, man. She's the overseer of all this stuff. She's the one that hires the directors. She's the one that oversees the projects. She's the one that gives the stamp of approval to everything. She is the one. She is the number one bad guy to this franchise. She's the problem. Now, I like the attack against the Resistance when they find out that the First Order can track the Resistance through hyperspace. Kylo Ren destroying the whole fleet and the hangar was badass. An outstanding scene. It really was. And I really like the scene where Kylo Ren is sensing his mother. And he has hesitation. And again, this further reiterates that Kylo Ren his spirit is still, it's still deliberating whether to be fully dark or fully light. So he's walking that fine line, and when his TIE fighter comrades blow away the hangar, it was a nice scene. I really liked it. Now, Leia flying in space, it didn't bother me. It really didn't. I actually appreciated it when I initially saw the film because I just wanted something where Leia was using the Force in a powerful way. She has the Skywalker bloodline in her. And I was so disappointed in The Force Awakens that she never became a Jedi. She never learned anything about the Force. And it was so disappointing because in Return of the Jedi, there was so much promise for the Princess Leia character. Yoda tells Luke, pass on what you've learned to your sister. And in the expanded universe, Leia becomes a Jedi, man. And she has so many badass moments. And to see her just, just sit around and just give commands in The Force Awakens, it sucked. So when I see her do this incredible feat in space in this film, I was like, oh yeah, she actually had some kind of training. She actually has some kind of power in the Force. This is awesome. And I know a lot of people didn't like it. They call it Princess Leia acting like Mary Poppins in space. I disagree with that because I was just happy that she was able to do something amazing. No matter how irrational it could be, how can she survive in space, etc., etc. I was just happy that she did something. Now, to me, what was ridiculous was not Leia flying in space. To me, what was ridiculous was just the handoff of this cloaked binary beacon. I just thought it was terrible. The way that it got handed off to Finn. Like, oh, what a coincidence that she's like ready to pass out and she drops it unconscious and that Finn just comes along and picks it up. I thought that was awful, right? Why not just give it to him? Just make her, half conscious and be like, take care of it, Finn, and just give it to him. It just feels so gimmicky and cheap. And again, just like Force Awakens, everything feels too convenient. It feels way too convenient for Leia to just at that very moment that she passes out, it falls on the floor and Finn's right there to pick it up. Now, in regards to Leia flying in space, the one thing that was kind of stupid was that when they opened the hatch to get her, Poe and the other Resistance soldiers, they would have flew out into space. I don't know why they just don't come up with little ideas to fix this. You could show like a force field being activated. It's a really quick fix. And you know that Disney and Lucasfilm have the billions of dollars to do whatever they want. But again, it feels like this film was based on a first draft and no one read over it and tried to apply logic and reasoning behind the scenes. Some of this stuff could have worked. A majority of it could have worked, I believe. But you just need to ask yourself as you're writing the screenplay, as you're writing the story, you need to ask questions. Okay, what if this? What if that? Okay, we got to think of this. We got to think of physics. We got to think of this. And it just feels like they undermine the audience. And I really feel like they're like, oh, these movies are for kids. They're not going to think of this stuff. They're stupid. Like, no, man. Don't underestimate kids. Don't underestimate 12-year-olds, man. They're smarter than you think, man. There's these 12-year-olds out here. They'll come at you talking about blocking and all different kinds of filmmaking techniques and all that stuff, man. The audience isn't stupid. And I really dislike that excuse that when you criticize these films and you actually find some real stuff that actually deserves criticism, and then the whole rationale to defend this stuff, to refute the criticisms is, oh, well, these movies are for kids. What do you expect? Like, give me a break, man. Now, in regards to this chase through space, it's ridiculous. Number one, Couldn't they send another Star Destroyer or ship to flank them or cut them off via hyperspace? I mean, the First Order have this whole fleet of ships, and they act like they all have to travel together. Like one of those ships couldn't just depart the fleet and choose to flank the Resistance ship. It's ridiculous. I just don't understand, like, the rationale for why they have to go through this sluggish chase is because the Resistance freighter or the Resistance transport ship is faster and lighter. I mean, it's so stupid. This is not the Navy. This is not taking place on Earth in the ocean. That kind of rationale is for the ocean, for naval fleet battles. And again, like I said previously, physics in Star Wars has never been good. But this is just, it's stupid. It's beyond stupid. The ignoring of physics in space that people love, like lightsabers and sound in space and the way the ships maneuver when they're dogfighting each other, is because that stuff is cool. But this is boring. And anyway, how fast something travels in space all corresponds to gravity. So it just depends on the gravitational pull that is around an object. For instance, if you throw an object in space, it will be in free fall and therefore weightless. But the rate of it, the speed, the acceleration, is according to the strength of the gravitational field where it's located. And in this chase, until they get to Crate, there is no planets around. So they should be traveling at the same rate, at the same acceleration. So this whole bullshit that the Resistance freighter or the Resistance ship, transport ship, is going faster because it's lighter, and it's just like, oh my God, man. None of these filmmakers, from J.J. Abrams to Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Force Awakens, to Rian Johnson, never consulted with anybody at Lucasfilm who knows about lore. Like, there's this guy named Pablo Hidalgo who's supposed to be the lore master. And I'm not trying to attack him in any way because I don't know how far his involvement goes into the making of these movies, whether they consult him or not. But they need to consult somebody like him. There's somebody there that knows about all this stuff. And the number one sin, other than the misunderstanding of Luke Skywalker's character in this film, the number one sin is that this film destroys the lore of Star Wars. It destroys the lore because it ignores it. And this is just one simple way right here. This and things like the Holdo maneuver, it's just really frustrating because it's like taking a dump on all the investment that the fans have made in reading the books and reading the comics and paying attention to all the fine details of this world that George Lucas created. Now, Luke revisiting the Falcon and encountering R2-D2 was really nice, and I like the way that R2 used the old message of Princess Leia from A New Hope in order to motivate him to teach Rey. Was cool. I really like that little nod right there. And, you know, one thing when I was watching these films that I appreciated and initially didn't was that Luke taught Rey the spiritual. A lot of people who watch this film that didn't like it feel that Luke didn't teach Rey anything. They say he didn't train her. But in a way he did. He did train her. He taught her the spiritual. He didn't teach her how to fight. He didn't teach her how to lift rocks and do things like that like Yoda did for Luke in Empire Strikes Back, which is important. However, the spiritual is more important. And I appreciate that. Now, before we get into the number one thing I hate about this movie, which is Admiral Holdo, we need to touch upon Poe again. Now, remember at the very beginning of this film, Leia slaps and demotes Poe because of his attack on the dreadnought. And they lost a lot of bombers, right? So that was the setup to make us look at Poe like he was some kind of idiot, like a hothead that didn't follow orders, okay? Now, trip off this. Now, really pay attention to this and remember this and just really, really absorb this and take this in, what I'm about to say. So, about 20 minutes later in the film, they find out that the First Order can track them through hyperspace. Okay, now, what did Poe say at the very beginning of the movie when he first saw the dreadnought and refused to listen to Leia's orders to retreat, right? And he continued to attack him. What did he say? He said, no, these things are fleet killers. Okay. So Poe was like, no, Leia, these things are fleet killers. We have to destroy it. It's important. We have to destroy it. It'll destroy the entire fleet. And then Leia gets upset because they lost the bombers. Almost like it wasn't worth it. It was for nothing. You didn't have to do that. Well, guess what? He did have to do that because Poe was right. He was right. If he had not destroyed the dreadnought and the First Order had continued to track them through hyperspace with the dreadnought, the resistance would have been destroyed. Poe was right. If Poe hadn't destroyed the dreadnought at the beginning of the film and basically sacrificed the bombers, the dreadnought would have been right there when they got tracked by the First Order in hyperspace, and it would have just destroyed them. So Poe was right. So what should have happened, once Leia realized this, she should have said, you know what? I'm wrong. I shouldn't have demoted you. I was wrong. Your demotion has been basically wavered. You can retain your command. In fact, you're promoted, Poe. But no, the film wants us to act like he was wrong. And Holdo was right. She's the hero. I mean, and this is where I become furious at this film and where the movie becomes just unforgivable at this point. It doesn't matter how good the scenes with Luke are or whatever. And Rey and Kylo, it just doesn't matter if it's profound or not because this exists. This is one of the worst storylines in a film I've ever seen in my life. It just makes no sense, right? And I absolutely hate Holdo. Admiral Holdo is the worst Star Wars character ever created. She just looks ridiculous. She looks like some kind of socialite snob who has no business being a military officer. I can't even stand the expression on her face. She disgusts me. She is the worst Star Wars character, worse than Jar Jar, worse than Rose Tico, worse than L3 from the Solo movie. She is just outright god awful. And her dialogue about the spark of hope is just infuriating, cheesy, superficial, and just outright terrible, cringeworthy dialogue. In these movies, they constantly talk about hope, but they never are able to elicit feelings of hope for me as the audience member. And I understand her not telling Poe the plan, but the fact that she didn't tell anyone, and especially after Poe performed a mutiny, just illustrates her as a terrible leader, and it illustrates her poor leadership skills, which contributed to the death of 360 resistance fighters. I loathe Admiral Holdo and hate her character more than anybody else, man, because they actually want me to admire her as a good character. They send her off and try to make her into this hero that does this Admiral hyperspace ramming into Snoke's fleet. And it just doesn't work, man. I hate her. She's a terrible character. And her whole dialogue, I mean, for all the hate that George Lucas gets and all the hate that the prequels get for quote unquote bad dialogue, her line about how hope is like the ray of sun. If you only believe it when you see it, you'll never make it through the night. Oh my God. That is like the worst dialogue ever. And for people to say that this film is so much better than the prequels, the writing is so much better, it's just, what a bunch of hypocrites, man. That line of dialogue from Admiral Holdo is hands down the worst dialogue ever uttered in a Star Wars movie. Whenever I hear her say that to Poe, hope is like the sun. If you only believe it when you see it, you'll never make it through the night. I mean, who the hell writes this shit? It's like an 8-year-old girl that wants to be a screenplay writer wrote it. And if that was the case, hey, that 8-year-old, good for her, man. But this is a grown man that wrote this. And I thought that was good. If I was a military officer and I wanted to know something, like my commander was withholding information from me, and that was her words of encouragement and her words to comfort me, I would pull out my handgun and shoot them right in the face and get court-martialed and probably go to jail for the rest of my life as a traitor, because it would just be so infuriating for me. I mean, can you imagine that? Imagine you care. You're Poe. You care for the Resistance crew. You care for the Resistance fighters. And you're thinking about staging a mutiny because your commander is not communicating to you what's going on. You're being hunted by space fascists who are attacking you, and there's barely any hope. And you're like, tell us the plan. We need to know what's going on. And she says, I'm not going to tell you the plan because hope is like the sun. If you believe it only when you see it, you'll never make it through the night. Oh my God, I would shoot the commanding officer in the face or either shoot myself in the head, man. Just the thought of that dialogue and the way people say that the dialogue in the prequels suck, it just pisses me off, man. These people are a bunch of hypocrites, man. They're a bunch of hypocrites. There is nothing as bad as Holdo saying that stupid shit in the prequels, man. And I can't for the life of me figure out how people can say, oh man, those sequels are so much better than the prequels. The dialogue is so much better. Thank God George Lucas didn't write the sequels, man, because Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams did a great job. Give me a break, man. They actually want me to admire this character, but it doesn't work, And there is a sequence in this film that I feel is utilized to try to teach Poe patience, because again, he's a hot-headed, stupid pilot that just wants to blow stuff up. He just wants to blow stuff up. So they use this little shot in order to teach Poe patience. So Poe wants to know the plan. He wants to know what's going on. Admiral Holdo's like, aren't you the one that caused us the death of our entire bombing fleet? I'm not going to tell you anything. And again, I get this little juvenile attempt to convey to the audience that this guy needs to learn patience and not be a hothead, even though it's so juvenile and pathetic in its execution. But in this sequence, Poe is literally on the bridge when Holdo tells him that he has been demoted and that he's not going to tell him the plan, whatever. It's on the bridge, and Poe is on the bridge, and it's not a coincidence that She is a woman, and everybody else on the bridge in this shot is populated by white women. And it's not a coincidence, because when you're a director, you are setting up a shot composition. It is not a coincidence at all. A director sets up a composition. The actors need to know their marks, where they're standing. The blocking of the scene needs to be worked out. And Poe is literally standing there with Holdo telling him that she's not going to tell him the plan. And you got like 3 or 4 white women in the background, perfectly positioned to make Poe feel like he is like being lectured by a group of white women. This scene right here was shot like this on purpose so that Poe can feel helpless against this girl power nonsense. But it's a fake kind of girl power, because I'm all for girl power. I'm all for feminism when it's done in a human way. Think of Padme in Phantom Menace, man. She was a real strong woman in that film. She, the Queen of Naboo, took it upon herself to lead the charge to get her planet back from the Separatists, or not the Separatists, from the Trade Federation. She was on the front lines fighting with the soldiers. She took it upon herself to go to the Senate and fight on behalf of her planet. She refused to give in and signed the treaty. Padme again, and Attack of the Clones. She's a senator who takes it upon herself to rescue Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, she goes in there with a blaster and everything. I mean, she risks her life and battles to the death nearly in the Geonosis arena. I mean, to me, that is girl power. But this right here, this feels like totally unnecessary. This is totally unnecessary. This is just simply putting Poe in a challenging position because he is subordinate to a woman and surrounded by women. It feels like a lecture, man. And it doesn't feel like a genuine moment where a woman faces a challenge and overcomes. And Star Wars is a staple of feminists. It really is to me. Leia was one of the first, if not the first, female character to take the damsel of distress archetype and just throw it out the window. You know, she just threw it out the window when she grabs the blaster from Han Solo and is like, into the garbage chute, fly boy. She's not a damsel in distress. She's taking charge. That was really, really revolutionary for its time when that happened. And think of her killing Jabba the Hutt. Somebody that sexually objectified her and enslaved her, and she just strangles the life out of him. I mean, you don't get any more empowering than that. I mean, that's girl power for you. But this, now, in regards to Rose doesn't bother me as much as Admiral Holdo. And like I said in the little segment about how each hero fails, she's naive and ignorant, but her heart is in the right place. She's just blinded by her trauma from childhood. And I don't want to spend too much time on Rose. She gets too much hate. And I only wish, like I said, I only wish that she knew and was aware that her trauma was blinding her. I wish that the fact that those people on Canto Bight that she abhors so much weren't entirely bad, that they also sold weapons to the resistance, her comrades. I wish she knew that fact, because I really feel like that would have been an interesting character moment for her to be aware of that. Now, this whole tracker nonsense about sneaking onto Snoke's ship to disable the tracker is garbage. I mean, you got to think about this. Finn and Rose, they're able to discern all this information that the tracker is on Snoke's ship and we just have to disable it and so and so and so. They are able to discern all this just from simply knowing that they are being tracked. What if it's new technology? And what if they're wrong? The setup to this whole scheme is awful. It's like Force Awakens. That moment when they're about to attack Star Killer Base, and oh, it just so happens that there's an oscillator that's big as a mountain, that's huge on the outside of Star Killer Base that everyone could see from miles away. Oh, it's just, well, what do you know? It's right there. Oh, what do you know? Finn can get us in. Oh, let's go. It's like the setup to these plots is so juvenile. And it's just like, really, dude? You really were able to set this whole plot for these guys to go on this little adventure to Canto Bight, to sneak on the track, to sneak on the Snoke ship, to disable the tracker. You were able to discern all this information just from the simple fact that, oh, we're being tracked. So A must equal B and B must equal C. Well, what are we doing? Let's go. It's like, oh my God, it's such bad writing. And again, there's nothing this bad in the prequels. I don't understand why people say the writing and the dialogue in the prequels is awful. It was awful. The sequels were so much better. Sure, they're not perfect, but at least they're not the prequels. At least the writing was better. Like, oh my God, man. They're hypocrites, man. They're hypocrites. There's no way that I feel that somebody could look at these scenes and read this script and not think it's bad dialogue. I just think that they're blinded by their hate for the prequels, because this is just terrible writing. And then here we go again with Poe, like, so we blow it up. So we blow it up. And how does Finn know that the tracker's there and where it is? Because he mops Snoke's ship. This character is so lame. He actually uttered that line of dialogue. Because I used to mop it. And you gotta sit here and tell me that the dialogue in the prequels is bad? Are you joking me? Are you joking me? Sure, I'm not saying that the prequels dialogue is perfect. I mean, I don't like that Jar Jar is almost on some kindergarten humor, caca-poo-poo stuff. But, I mean, at least his character is supposed to be stupid. I mean, here we have the actual protagonist, the main protagonist, our quote-unquote heroes, uttering this stupid crap. He actually said, I used to mop it. Wow, just what I always wanted, man. When I thought of the potential of the Star Wars sequels, the number one thing that I had in my head was, you know what? I want one of the protagonists in the sequels to be a janitor. And I want them to have mopped the new Emperor's ship. That would be awesome. I could really relate to that. Oh my God. What an insult to John Boyega. What an insult. It really was for this character to be written the way he was. So much wasted potential. You know, and if they can take a small ship to Canto Bight, sneak it away without the First Order noticing or giving a crap, couldn't they have come up with a better plan? Couldn't they have gotten help from one of Leia's allies? I mean, I know that Leia at this moment in the film is in a coma, but come on, you could have come up with something better. Something better could have been written. And this master code breaker nonsense is garbage. It's like me dropping you off at Las Vegas and telling you, now go find a guy with a flower on his shirt. Like, really? Do you know how hard that would be? Do you have any idea how difficult that would be? And again, the whole excuse, well, these movies are for kids, you're insulting kids now. Don't insult kids by saying that. Because I really believe that kids are smart enough to see through this writing. The writing is awful and worse than anything in the prequels. And I don't appreciate the sexual innuendo from Maz Kanata in regards to the Codebreaker. I mean, that was bizarre. That was bizarre, like the whole sexual innuendo between L3 and Lando in Solo. I mean, I don't understand where these people's minds are at. I'm pretty sure that all you fans out there that love Star Wars, that really love Star Wars and appreciate it for its mythological filmmaking and storytelling, would treat this material with more reverence, and your minds wouldn't be in the gutter. You would be thinking on epic storytelling and character archetypes and the hero's journey and things like that. I just don't understand. I mean, to me it's not funny. I don't find that funny. I find it bizarre. It really rubs me the wrong way. This sexual innuendo, this whole like interspecies. I understand that there's interspecies relationships, and that's fine, but this is bizarre. I mean, look at Maz Kanata, and then look at that dude, the Codebreaker. I don't think that dude would go in for Maz, man. He would be more attracted to the women that are with him at that table. And same thing with Lando. I don't think Lando would have sexual relations with L3. I mean, sure, interspecies. I'm pretty sure Lando would be into the Twi'leks, or the same alien species as Ahsoka Tano. Something like that. A humanoid. You know what I'm saying? But, I mean, it's just bizarre. It's very perverse, and I don't appreciate it at all. Now, this connection between Rey and Kylo was very interesting. I really enjoyed the interplay, and both actors give great performances, especially Adam Driver. Adam Driver, his performance and his performances in all three of these films are the best part of these films. They're literally like the only thing that I like about these movies is Kylo Ren. Even though I don't like exactly how he's depicted all of the time or where his character went, but the potential that was there is the best thing about these movies. Adam Driver is the best thing about these movies, and at the end of the day, he's better than all this. He is so much better than all this crap that Disney's giving him as far as his character, his characterization as Kylo Ren. This stuff is beneath him because he's such a good actor and he deserves better roles than Kylo Ren, in my opinion. I mean, they really didn't even develop his character in this trilogy because the most interesting parts of the story take place off screen. Snoke seducing him, all the problems, the potential problems with his mom and father, it all happened off screen. It almost feels like there's an entirely different trilogy missing from this quote-unquote Skywalker saga, which is complete bullshit because it's not the Skywalker saga. When the Force Awakens trailer first came out, they used some of the dialogue from Return of the Jedi where Luke is like, the Force is strong in my family. I have it. My father has it. And I even think he says, my sister has it. You have that power too. And it was totally inferring when he goes, you have that power too, that the main protagonist was going to be a Skywalker. Now, why in the hell will Luke Skywalker say this? The Force was strong in my family. And go through his father, his sister, himself, and then be like, you have that power too. If he's talking to somebody that isn't a Skywalker, what relevance does him bringing up his family have? Because in this film, Rian Johnson decided to make Rey a nobody. And I was so upset initially by this because I was fooled. We were all fooled. We were all sold that this was going to be the Skywalker saga, but instead it's the nobody saga. This has nothing to do with the other 6 films from a protagonist point of view. And then in Rise of Skywalker, they decide to backtrack and make her a Palpatine. And again, this isn't the Skywalker saga. This was a complete, like, they just baited us and completely fooled us. And this story, this sequel trilogy, this Disney trilogy, literally has no relevance to the other 6 films because of that. And Kylo, even though he's has the Skywalker bloodline in him, he gets sidelined so bad in these movies, especially Rise of Skywalker. It's so pathetic. Now, when it comes to the interplay between Rey and Kylo, I liked it. I thought it was very interesting. However, it. I never interpreted it as something romantic. And after I saw this movie, people were talking about Raylo and all this stupid crap, and I was like, "What? You actually think that there is some kind of romance there?" And I never thought that Disney would run with this. Like, I thought the Raylo fan base, I thought they were insane and sick in the head because this is an abusive relationship. Kylo Ren literally raped her mind. Kylo Ren is a genocidal maniac who killed her friend or her father figure, whatever, Harrison Ford, Han Solo. He killed his own father, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, they make such a great couple. Oh my god, I hope they get together in the next movie. Let's do some fan fiction. Kylo and Rey, what a beautiful relationship. Ugh. We are living in sick times. These people are sick, and we are living in sick times. Sick and perverse times. Really, it's sad. It really is sad. Now, in regards to Rey and Luke's duel in the rain, I was initially very upset by this because I interpret it as Rey beating Luke. However, touching upon what Star Wars really means, I totally look at this whole scene entirely different now. Because it's not about who beats who, it's about the Force, it's about being a Jedi. And at the end of the day, Luke does not want to fight Rey. Sure, can he beat her? Yes. Can he destroy her? Absolutely, I totally believe that. He can destroy her if he really wanted to. But Luke doesn't want to fight. A Jedi should not really want to fight. So when I look at my initial reaction, which is me getting upset, how can they have Rey beat Luke? And technically, look, the fight wasn't over. Luke slipped and fell. Sure, she's in a position of dominance, towering over him, but Luke was keeping himself levitated using the Force. That's why they cut to his hand, right? So Luke could have still done something. However, he doesn't want to. He chooses not to. Why? Because at the end of the day, I don't feel like a Jedi Master is going to want to fight his potential students or going to want to fight over something like this. And I think we're totally looking at the scene in a wrong way, right? And this is one of the things that I appreciate about this film. Despite the overwhelmingly bad that's present, I do appreciate the fact that Ryan Johnson is asking us to question what we believe about Star Wars, right? So our initial reaction, how can Rey beat Luke? Oh my god, this film is awful. They disrespected Luke. Look, Luke shouldn't want to fight his Rey, right? This is what a true Jedi is about, right? Yoda said so himself in The Empire Strikes Back. Passivity, right? Knowledge and defense is what the Force is used for. And again, I just want to re-emphasize, if Luke really wanted to kick Rey's ass, he could have done it, right? But deep down inside, Luke is still that good person. So that's what I take away from the film now. Sure, when I first saw it, I was pissed off. And I'm not going to doubt that. I'm not going to deny that, rather. However, I'm looking at it totally different now because the film, despite all the negative stuff that's present, it really reminds me what Star Wars is really about. And it's about the Force. It's about knowledge and defense. It's about peace. And Luke does not want to defeat quote unquote Rey in this scene. However, that doesn't mean there's other things present that I don't like, which I'm definitely going to continue to touch upon. It was interesting, even from a what if perspective, even if I disagree with how they took the story, it was interesting to see Rey get rejected by Luke. And this really reminds me of a film written by Bruce Lee and starring David Carradine called The Silent Flute or The Circle of Iron, depending on what country you were from. It was released under The Circle of Iron in America, and I think internationally it was known as Silent Flute. But it should be known as Silent Flute because if you watch the movie, The Circle of Iron has nothing to do with the movie. So in The Silent Flute, it's very similar. We got a student that is seeking the tutelage of a master who just keeps on denying him. No, no, I can't teach you. No, I can't teach you. No, I can't teach you. And he starts to teach the student, but in a indirect way. Similar to how Luke did, how he taught Rey spiritual lessons in the Force. So I thought that was very similar to Silent Flute, the way Luke went about Rey and vice versa. And again, it was very interesting to see Rey get rejected. It's a challenge for her. And then it was also very interesting to see Rey think that she could bring Kylo Ren back to the light side and have that totally just blow up in her face. Like, no, it's not going to happen. Now, let's talk about this action sequence that involves the Praetorian Guard. So you got Rey and Kylo versus these guards, which are supposed to be the elite guardsmen for Snoke. Now, my biggest complaint with this is the fight choreography is pretty messy. It's not that good, especially in comparison with the prequels, man. I mean, even with the original trilogy, I really have some issues with the fight choreography here. Now, please pay attention to the fight choreography in this scene, and you will notice that one of the Praetorian guards, their weapon magically disappears. Please pay attention. And also, the fight choreography in this scene is totally accommodating to the protagonist so that they win. And I mean that in a bad way. Not that the guy that's fighting has to lose. That's not what I mean. I mean that, for instance, Rey is in a chokehold and her lightsaber is, her arm holding her lightsaber is above the hold, right? But I don't understand how letting go of the lightsaber is going to allow for the guard, the elite guard, to let go of his grasp so that she can duck, catch the lightsaber, and then go up and cut his head off. Like how is her letting go of the lightsaber gonna make the guard release his chokehold on her? Like, it makes no sense whatsoever. And the vanishing weapon is just unexcusable. They did it because they think the audience is stupid and that you guys won't notice. You guys should be insulted by stuff like this. I mean, this is the day and age where things like that don't need to happen. Coming from Disney, a company that has billions of dollars at their disposal to make anything they want. I could understand if something like that occurred in a low-budget sci-fi film, but there's just no excuse. They really hoped that you wouldn't notice that, and that you would just shut up and consume the product. It was sloppy. Like, what the hell was Kylo Ren doing? It's like he's like purposely using his lightsaber to stab the floor, and I'm like, what strategy is this? How is this helping you fight these guys? Now, I'm jumping back a little bit. That one scene when Luke was teaching Rey the lesson about how the Jedi to say that if the Jedi die, the light dies is vanity. Can you feel that? That's literally the best scene out of the entire sequel trilogy. It's the best thing out of the entire film. That scene is the best thing out of this entire sequel trilogy. That is such an outstanding scene. And it is a direct answer to J.J. Abrams for the fallacious Force Awakens opening. When Poe Dameron is getting the map from that old guy. And then the old guy's like, without the Jedi, there could be no balance in the Force. When I saw that in the movie, in the back of my head, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? The balance of the Force thing, that's Anakin fulfilling the prophecy. But now we're saying all the Jedi are necessary. So I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? And I like that Rian Johnson put this scene in there as a direct answer to J.J. Abrams for his fallacious little scene from The Force Awakens. And again, this is the directors. This is Rian Johnson giving the middle finger to J.J. Abrams. Some of his stupid ideas from Force Awakens. Profound stuff right here, man. It really was. And I commend Rian Johnson. I can't believe it. I'm actually fully complimenting Rian Johnson for this scene. The abstract nature of the Force, the way that Rian Johnson conveys it and displays it in this scene with the water pouring in reverse was cool, man. Like, this was like, it kind of reminded me of some French surrealism. And I really appreciated that. That was really artistic. And also showing death and life and peace and violence, and using the metaphor of the waves crashing against the shore and destroying that nest as violence, and then showing the birds and with the little hatchlings or the chicks as being harmony. That's great stuff, man. It's really beautiful stuff. And again, I commend Rian Johnson for this little segment right here. And scenes like this make the film watchable. All the scenes with Mark Hamill make this film watchable. Even though I disagree with the direction they took his character. But again, this scene right here was outstanding. Now, Luke is afraid. And you got to remember that Luke, after this scene, when Rey went to the cave and then she came back, and I'm talking about how it was like really fast. I'm not talking about when she entered the cave and saw all those reflections of herself. Like when she came back really fast and then Luke got scared. And he says something along the lines, I've only seen power like this in Kylo Ren. It didn't scare me enough then, it does now. Look, Luke is talking about being afraid. So it makes me ask myself, is this a contradiction? Like, Luke, look, man, I thought the Jedi were about no emotion. You even hear the dialogue from the Jedi Code when Rey is approaching the tree, that there is no emotion, only peace, right? So Luke is over here talking about, oh, it didn't scare me enough then. It does now. And then when he tells the events about the night he confronted Kylo Ren, he talks about how I saw into his mind in that blah, 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 that he was going to be responsible for the death of everything I love or something like that. But I know he said the destruction of everything I love. He said that, everything I love. And I ask myself, here we go again. Luke is afraid over here. And then over in this scene, Luke is talking about he doesn't want to lose things that he loves. Look, I thought Jedi were about no emotion, no fear. I thought Jedi were about not forming attachments. Luke being afraid caused him to close himself off from the Force. So Luke closed himself off from the Force. And again, we're here talking about emotion. And emotion is the conundrum. And when the dark side cave called to Rey, She exemplified this great power, and he says, "It didn't scare me enough then, it does now." And I asked myself, I thought the Jedi weren't supposed to fear. Now, there's a lot of prequel humor in this film, and basically it doesn't even bother me all that much because I enjoy the prequels for the most part. And I mean, some of the humor you could take or leave it. Stuff like the Porgs and the Canto Bite aliens and BB-8 and the AT Walker shooting those and him shooting the coins. It's a CGI fest, man. And again, I want to talk about those prequel haters that go on and drone on incessantly about how the prequels are just CGI garbage, etc., etc. You guys are hypocrites, man. Look at all the CGI in this film. It's ridiculous. The Canto Bite aliens. The one that burps in BB-8's face, and when he starts putting the coins on him like he's a slot machine. Look at that scene in the Snoke's ship when BB-8 comes out of the AT Walker to rescue Rose and Finn. Oh my God, it's like I'm watching the droid factory sequence in Attack of the Clones. And it's super CGI. And last but not least, look at Crate. Look at the duel on Crate between Luke and Kylo Ren. Well, actually, it's not a duel. Whatever, the confrontation between Luke and Kylo. Man, that entire thing is CGI. They're not really anywhere. They're not in White Sands, New Mexico, man. That whole thing is CGI. And but oh my God, here are all the sequel defenders and proponents of this movie. Oh man, these movies are so much better, man. They didn't use CGI. The prequels look like shit, man. They're CGI fest. I'm so glad that the sequels decided to use practical effects and shoot on location. This stuff is a CGI fest just as much as the prequels, and you guys are hypocrites. And it's okay, if you like this movie, that's fine. It really is. But don't tear down the prequels to prove your point. Because it's hypocritical. It really is. Now, I just want to reiterate that when Rose talks about how much she hates the people at Canto Bight, again, she fails to see her own ignorance and naivety. And she fails to see that she has let her childhood trauma blind her and make her make prejudicial generalizations. And she's generalizing everyone at Canto Bight as war profiteers for the First Order based on stories that she heard. She literally says, I've heard this stuff from stories. Like when Finn asks her about the people there, and she says, it's filled with some of the worst people in the galaxy. And she says that she's heard it from stories. Now, when in actuality, they also sold weapons to the Resistance. So, without them, the Resistance would have been squashed a long time ago. Her heart is in the right place, but she's ignorant, not naive, blinded by the trauma she endured in her childhood when her home was shelled by the First Order. Too bad she doesn't realize it, because that would have improved her character arc. And the whole setup between how Rose and Finn got arrested to meet DJ was stupid. What I'm talking about here is that these guys got arrested for a parking ticket. How silly can you be? You couldn't come up with something else? This whole scene doesn't feel like Star Wars at all. I mean, come on, man. We got protagonist characters that are janitors. We got our heroes getting into trouble because of a parking ticket. This stuff is so uninspired. Now, let's talk about Luke's second lesson. When he talks about that the legacy of the Jedi is failure. Now, for me, that's absurd. Failure? A legacy of failure? Okay, I get it. The Jedi got wiped out because they were fooled by Sidious in the Clone Wars.
But let's not forget that there was 1,000 generations or 1,000 years of peace. 1,000 years of peace is not a failure, man. That's an achievement. I mean, how many countries can honestly say that they haven't engaged in battle or a war in 1,000 years? That is a monumental achievement. And I think that Luke saying that just makes him look like a pessimistic fool. Now, I'm on board with him talking about the Jedi were full of pride and hubris. The hubris of the Jedi is what led to their downfall when Sidious exploited that. I agree, dude. I agree wholeheartedly with that. But when he says Obi-Wan was responsible for the creation of Darth Vader, to me, I was like, at first I was like, wait a minute. I mean, can we honestly say that? Can we honestly say that Obi-Wan was solely responsible for the creation of Darth Vader? There were so many contributions as to why Anakin turned. Him knowing his mother and being a slave, the way the Jedi treated him when he was young, forbidding him from seeing his mother didn't help. His mother dying by the Sand People didn't help. All those seeds planted by Palpatine, such as in Attack of the Clones when he's saying, oh, you're going to be the most powerful Jedi. All that stuff was just feeding his ego, the manipulations of Sidious. That had some responsibility as to why Anakin became Vader. Now, Obi-Wan does share some responsibility, but to me, it wasn't his training. For me, it's when Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith asked Anakin to spy on the Chancellor. That was the biggest no-no that Obi-Wan did as far as contributing to Anakin's turn to the dark side. That moment in the film, Obi-Wan shouldn't have done that, man. Because even though we know that Palpatine is an evil dude, Anakin didn't know that at the moment. And essentially, what Obi-Wan asked him to do was to spy and deceive his friend. So it's almost like they're using evil to fight evil. And it didn't work. And that was a major no-no. Obi-Wan shouldn't have done that, man. It really was a contributing factor as to why Anakin turned to the dark side. But again, it was also a whole bunch of other reasons. And for Luke to sit there and say that it was just Obi-Wan's training that led to Anakin becoming Vader. He flat out just says it was the training of a Jedi Master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that led to the creation of Darth Vader, which is total bullshit. It was so much other stuff. Also, the death of Padme. I mean, come on, man. But supposedly pride made Luke a bad teacher? That the legend went to his head? Shit, Luke was always selfless to me. He was a symbol of hope. And in regards to Kylo Ren, you gotta remember, man, that the darkness in Kylo Ren was present even before Luke trained him. Remember Leia said in Force Awakens, Leia and Han, there's too much Vader in him. That's why I sent him to train with Luke. She said that. The darkness was there before Luke even trained Kylo. I mean, come on, man. And then we find out in Rise of Skywalker that it was the Emperor Palpatine manipulating his thoughts from the very beginning. So it totally contradicts the whole point of the scene. Because the whole point of Luke telling Rey this history lesson is to convey to her that the Jedi are responsible for all these Sith. The Jedi are responsible for creating Vader. And now the Jedi are responsible for creating Kylo Ren. But it totally contradicts what Leia told Han in The Force Awakens. The darkness was already there. And that's why she sent him to train with Luke. What compelled Kylo Ren to turn to the dark side? To be receptive to the dark side? Palpatine manipulating him, as seen in The Rise of Skywalker? Too much important stuff happens off screen in these movies. It's a mess. People say that these movies are better than the prequels. Hell no. The prequels are like classic filmmaking to me in compared to this crap. The prequels were way more coherent. Now, in regards to the Canto Bight chase, I feel like it didn't feel like Star Wars for me. It feels out of place, and it feels like something out of a Disney cartoon like the Aristocrats or the Rescuers. I really didn't find it enjoyable. It just happens on screen, and I was bored out of my mind. I mean, compare this chase to the speeder bike chase in Return of the Jedi, or the pod race in Phantom Menace, or the chase through Coruscant in Attack of the Clones, and this thing is lame, man. And another thing is, I feel like the DJ character played by Benicio del Toro was so uninspired and boring. Like, this is the most bland, boring character in the entire franchise, in my opinion. I mean, you get this great actor, and you couldn't come up with something better. What a waste of Benicio del Toro. I mean, you couldn't make him at least visually or aesthetically into something cool, like a cool Twi'lek alien or something. I mean, instead this guy just, he looks like a bum that shops at Goodwill. And what's his whole deal? He talks with a lisp like a snake or something, and I'm just like, this is the most blandest, boring thing ever. It's like something out of a sci-fi channel science fiction movie made for TV. I mean, it's so boring. And you know, when Rose and Finn decide to let the horses out of the stable and destroy some of Canto Bight, you know, she says that it's worth it. Like, it was worth to destroy some of the casino. And I really think that that is sending an ignorant message to the audience, and especially young people, because you have to remember that Rose, her whole disposition towards the people at this casino is misplaced, because it's based on a prejudice that is caused by her childhood trauma. And you got to remember, she said that everything bad that she heard about these people is through stories. And we find out later that these people sold weapons to the good guys too. So none of this stuff that I'm talking about is clearly conveyed to the character. So they don't learn about this stuff, except Finn. So I really feel like this is sending a bad message to the audience and young people in general. Destroy public property of these rich people because they're scum. But I mean, it's like a fallacious and juvenile critique on capitalism that tries to be profound, because when Finn finds out that these people sold weapons to the good guys too, I mean, everything just feels so messy, and like the message is so muddled, and all the details, because the details are not organized properly. And again, I feel like it's sending a really ignorant message. And for instance, when Rose and Finn are going on this chase, and you see all these aliens that are getting scared and almost getting trampled over. Remember that weird alien? I mean, I'm not trying to be ridiculous here, but remember that weird alien woman that looked like she was made out of titties? I mean, I don't know what else to say, but she just, whatever. This alien that looks like she was made out of titties. You honestly want me to believe that she is a war profiteer? Like, I mean, I just don't get it. I just don't get what the hell is going on in these scenes and what Rian Johnson is trying to convey. I mean, it's ridiculous. And again, it sends a really ignorant message because at the end, Finn says it was worth to tear up that town and make them hurt. And then she sets the little space horse free, and then she says, now it's worth it. And I'm like, what? All you did was just free some of the horses, and ultimately what's going to happen is that the children who set them free, they're going to get punished for that. And they're child slaves, and they still remain child slaves. So the message that's being sent is so juvenile. It's so just poorly executed. It makes me ask, like, what is Rian Johnson trying to say? Now, just to further add in regards to the scene where Luke fights Rey and the whole discovery of her communing with Kylo, and we get the true interpretation or the true rendition of events that took place the night Kylo Ren killed the Jedi students. It seems like Rian Johnson is borrowing from another film that he did called Looper. And what I'm specifically talking about here is in Looper, the main protagonist, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt character, has to basically kill a child in order to proactively prevent him from committing crimes that he did in the future. So that story is about time travel. So in other words, he knows that this kid is going to do some really bad stuff in the future, so he has to deliberate whether to kill him in order to prevent those events from happening. And I see a big similarity to Luke Skywalker's deliberations and that moment of weakness he had where he thought of killing Kylo Ren in order to proactively prevent him from doing these horrible crimes in the future. And like I said, J.J. Abrams is the one that set up this whole Luke's apprentice, killed all his students. Luke felt responsible, walked away from it all, went to the first Jedi temple. But Rian Johnson came up with the reason as to why Luke is there, why he's not coming back to the fight. You know, directors, they have reoccurring themes in their films, especially writer-directors. Now, when Luke says to Rey, this is not going to go the way you think. And he's basically talking, or Rian Johnson, I feel like, is basically talking back to J.J. Abrams' predictable ripoff and plagiarist approach to Star Wars. So, when J.J. Abrams plagiarized A New Hope to make Force Awakens, everybody went into this film thinking it was going to be like Empire Strikes Back, where Luke is going to train Rey like Yoda. And ultimately, what's going to happen with Kylo Ren? Oh, he's going to be turned to the light side because there's quote-unquote still good in him. Even Leia says so in Force Awakens, despite Kylo killing his father. So everybody thinks that Rian Johnson is going to follow the trend that J.J. Abrams continued or set down, which was that Kylo Ren is going to turn to the light side. And I think that when Rey says to Luke, I can bring him to the light side, I saw his future, blah, 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 and then Luke says, this is not going to go the way you think. I think that is Rian Johnson saying to JJ, I'm not going to follow this whole plagiarist approach like you did. And basically, it seems like the setup is going to be like Return of the Jedi, with Rey trying to bring back Kylo from the light side, similar to how Luke did to Vader. And I get what Rian Johnson's trying to do. He's trying to basically tell the audience it's not going to go down in the predictable manner like J.J. Abrams did. It's not going to be a ripoff of Empire Strikes Back, in other words. However, when Rey starts to tell Luke, there's good in him, she says, you made the mistake by thinking his choice was already made, but there's still good in him. It comes across as total bullshit because it's like she's preaching to the choir. You know, Luke should already know that there's good in him because he is the pivotal figure of that legend. He believed that there was good in his father, who was an evil guy, and he redeemed him. And now it's like Rey's preaching to the choir, talking about, oh, there's still good in your nephew. Didn't you know? Didn't you know there's still good in him? And it comes across as preaching to the choir, and it's maddening for me to watch. It's like taking some mythological figure or religious figure like Jesus and being like, Jesus, don't you know that you have to forgive people? Don't you know the virtue of forgiveness and kindness? It's like, of course he does. He's Jesus. Or talking to Buddha like, don't you know the virtue of meditation and passivity, Buddha? Like, come on. Like, of course he does. He's Buddha. And now we see Yoda coming in his Force Ghost form to give Luke some inspiration. And it was all well and good until he uses the lightning to set the tree on fire. And now we have a major breaking of the lore. Thank you, Rian Johnson. Thank you for being an asshole right here by ignoring the lore. Because now Force Ghosts can influence the material world. So now it's like, well, shit, if they can do this, then why don't the Force Ghosts all come to the aid of Luke in Return of the Jedi and help him overthrow the Emperor? Remember, Obi-Wan Kenobi said, I cannot interfere any further. So when he said that in Return of the Jedi, you felt like something was set in stone, like the Force Ghosts cannot interact with the material world. And that's what I thought. But now that's completely gone to shit. And, you know, there's some proponents of this film and some ridiculous rebuttals to this argument. They say that, well, remember Obi-Wan Kenobi in Return of the Jedi when he told Luke the side of his story about his father, about Anakin? Remember when he sat down on that tree to tell the story? Well, he was sitting down on the tree, so therefore he was interacting with the material world. Oh my God. That's a real rebuttal right there. That's a real argument to people who were upset that Yoda broke the lore by igniting the tree on fire with lightning. Well, Obi-Wan Kenobi sat down on the tree. Oh my God. These people, man, if you like the movie, that's one thing. But don't come up with these bullshit rationalizations, man. You can at the very least say, yeah, that was a mistake. However, I enjoy this about the movie. I feel like there's way more positives than negatives. I would respect that argument more so than coming up with these shitty, pathetic, and most of all, petty examples. So, in regards to the books in the tree, now, there's something that Yoda says that gets under my skin and that I just find confusing, and that's that Yoda says that the books don't contain anything that the girl Rey already possesses. And, you know, I ask myself, what is the relevance of saying Rey? And is it that the books don't have anything that we all already possess? Like everybody, every living thing. You know, it's like saying it's like getting a self-help book and somebody thinks that this book is super important and doesn't want it to be destroyed. And you say to them, hey man, everything that is good is already in you. Or is Yoda trying to say specifically that Rey already contains all the knowledge that's in the books? And you know, I really feel like when Rey says in that stupid movie Rise of Skywalker, I am all the Jedi, that is what J.J. Abrams is trying to clarify with that line and connect it to this moment when Yoda says this. Now she doesn't need to learn anything. She already possesses all the knowledge that the books have because she is an avatar for all the Jedi. So lame, man. Now, another thing I want to discuss is this whole Finn, Rose, and DJ sneaking onto an Imperial ship. And this is such a tired idea in the Star Wars movies. This is like the fourth or fifth time where the main protagonists have to dress up as Imperials and sneak onto a base or something. They did it in Rogue One. They did it in Return of the Jedi. Now they're doing it again in Last of Skywalker. And you gotta remember, in Force Awakens, yeah, they didn't dress up as Imperials, but they had to sneak into Starkiller Base and disable the shields. So here we are again, sneaking into an Imperial ship to disable a tracker. It's such a boring concept that Star Wars keeps on regurgitating over and over again. They keep recycling this idea over and over again. And also, they never show how the hell did they get from sneaking into the ship and dressed as Imperials. They never show that. I mean, how do you sneak in to a First Order docking bay dressed as civilians and get into those clothes? Like, I know they show a laundry room where the First Order have their clothes and they're being ironed and stuff, but I'm just like, I don't know, man. At this point in the movie, things like this are entirely trivial because there's so much worse that is going on in this film. So many more inconsistencies. And at the end of the day, The Last Jedi feels like a standalone film. And I say that kind of in a positive because, I didn't like Force Awakens at all that much. And I think Last Jedi is better just because it's more artistic. And it feels like a standalone film because all the dialogue in this movie covers the important stuff in Force Awakens, which is a good thing because I don't have to revisit that New Hope ripoff. And as far as Finn, yeah, there's some good things that happen in that film that aren't conveyed through dialogue in The Last Jedi, but honestly, who gives a shit? Just look what they did to his character. All that potential and all that promise just pissed away for nothing. And more than his character was pissed away, I mean, we still got questions such as, how did Mos Canada, get Luke Skywalker's lightsaber? It's not explained. Why did the lightsaber call out to Rey if she's not a Skywalker? Of course it's not explained. And why did Luke Skywalker leave a map behind with this old guy if he didn't want to be found? And why was half of the map in R2? I mean, nothing is explained. And no, I'm not going to read some comic book or Disney canon novel to explain this crap. And that's the funny thing. It's like J.J. Abrams sets up this mystery. Where did Mos Canada get the lightsaber? Oh, it's a story we'll save for later. So you're thinking it's important stuff or it's going to be interesting. And then when you find out what happened, it's like so dull and boring. I went on Wikipedia one time to find out, okay, what did happen to Mos Canada? How did she get this lightsaber? And the explanation is something so lame and stupid like, somebody found it in the underlevels of Cloud City and they sold it on the market and she bought it. It's like, why didn't you just say that in Force Awakens? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it'd be different if it involved some kind of like epic adventure and some perilous journey, or something interesting. But instead it's like, oh, I found it on the ground levels of Cloud City and then I sold it to Goodwill. And then Mos Canada bought it there. The end. Seriously, it's so funny. It's so funny. And another thing that is not explained in this film is what happened to the Jedi students that left with Kylo Ren. It is not explained in this film, nor is it explained in the next film, Rise of Skywalker. And another thing that's not explained in this film is the Knights of Ren, which were introduced in The Force Awakens. What a wasted opportunity. You could have done something epic right here. Instead, we get this ridiculous side journey with Finn and Rose. And then when we finally do get the Knights of Ren, it is so lame in Rise of Skywalker. They literally did nothing. They just stood around and looked cool and then ultimately got their asses killed. And that was it. They did absolutely nothing of significance, and they did absolutely nothing that was cool. Nothing at all. Whether it was action or acting chops wise. It was such a wasted opportunity right there. And again, I was initially very upset at how Snoke got killed without them explaining his backstory. And I felt like Rian Johnson was trying to do this whole like Game of Thrones, kill off an important character and shock you kind of thing. Snoke shouldn't have been introduced in the first place. Screw a wannabe Palpatine. He should have never existed in the first place. And I think Kylo Ren should have always had been the main villain. He should have always been the main villain. And I think that the whole being seduced to the dark side by a dark side master is just retreading the old trilogy again. And it would have been a lot more interesting if Kylo Ren had turned to the dark side on his own volition, all by himself. Something new. That would have been a lot more interesting. And another thing about this scene right here is that the way Rian Johnson killed off Snoke, I feel like, again, he was trying to emulate Game of Thrones when that series killed off a major character in order to provoke the kind of shock that happened when people were watching that show. Because when a character in that show got killed off, it was so surprising. It really caught you off guard. Why? Because it was a main character that you spent a lot of time with and that you began to relate to and know, and you had intimate knowledge of who they were. But when Rian Johnson kills off Snoke, we don't know anything about him, so it absolutely does not do anything for me. It does nothing. It was supposed to be shocking, but how is it shocking if I don't know a single thing about the guy? I don't know nothing about him. It was a bad mistake for Rian Johnson to kill off Snoke and not explain his backstory. I understand why he killed him off. It was a stupid idea from J.J. Abrams to put this wannabe emperor copying the original trilogy. So I understand why he killed him off. But still, you gotta explain the story. J.J. Abrams set this thing up. Disney, Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, you made your bed, now sleep in it. You can't just ignore the story. You can't ignore the setup. Rian Johnson, you shouldn't have done that because it's self-indulgent. And even though you think J.J. Abrams' idea is no good, at the very least, just give us some backstory. One sentence is all it takes. A couple of sentences. And the perfect opportunity would have been when Luke Skywalker is giving the history lesson to Rey and he says Snoke already turned his heart. Well, guess what? This is the perfect fucking opportunity for Rey to go, who's Snoke? Where did he come from? And then Luke can answer it in 2-3 sentences. It would have took 10 seconds, 15 seconds, but it's like, oh my God, it's such a big deal. Like when you hear why Rian Johnson chose not to explain nothing. It's like, well, I didn't want to take time to go into this elaborate backstory for the character. It's like, who the fuck asked for that? Nobody asked for no elaborate backstory. We just wanted a backstory. Something simple. I mean, what kind of excuse is that? All it would have took is a couple of sentences, and that would have been the perfect opportunity. When Luke is giving the history lesson, Rey could have said, "Who is Snoke? How did he turn Kylo's heart? I don't understand. Tell me more." What I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. Tell a story. And just to discuss another thing that I feel, and that's that the main protagonists, Rey and Finn, in these movies are always talking about the legend of Skywalker and Han Solo. Oh, I know you. I've heard of you and all this stuff. And it makes me feel like this story is far too aware of itself. And it doesn't feel like a true continuation. It has a feeling like Page Master, the movie Page Master, or The Never Ending Story, where the characters from an outside world step into like a secret realm, or they step into a book, or they step into a story, and they're like, "Oh, I know you, I read about you." And there was also a film with Jet Li and Jackie Chan called The Forbidden Kingdom, and it had a similar setup like that. The character, the protagonist, steps into this other world, and you have Jet Li and Jackie Chan there, and he's really from Earth, or contemporary times on Earth. And that's what it feels like. It feels like Rey and Finn are characters from outside the Star Wars galaxy. And they step into the Star Wars galaxy and they're like, "Oh, look, it's Luke Skywalker, the legend. Oh, look, it's Han Solo, the legend. Oh, I know you, you're Leia." And it doesn't feel like a true continuation to the story. Can you imagine if, say, the sequel to Blade Runner 2049, where the main character, Ryan Gosling, was like to Harrison Ford, "Oh, you're Deckard. Oh, I know about you. You're a legend. You're a legend. You defeated so and so and so." And it just like, dude, just tell the story. You don't gotta go about it like, "Hey guys, remember the original trilogy? The legend of Luke and how he redeemed his father?" It's like, dude, just tell the story. Constantly addressing the events that took place in the other movies makes it feel like the characters don't belong. It feels like the story is too aware of itself. Now, in regards to Captain Phasma, what a waste. Such a great actress. Wasted. Boba Fett, they say that she's the Boba Fett of this trilogy, but Boba Fett was at least competent in Empire Strikes Back. At least he was successful. He got Han Solo, man. He was a bounty hunter and he did his job and he achieved what he sought out to do. But Phasma, man, she just looked like a buffoon. In Force Awakens and this movie, she did absolutely nothing except stand there and get her ass handed to her. In Force Awakens, she got thrown in a trash compactor, and in here, Finn beats her because she got distracted. And she's supposed to be like this big badass Imperial, but she's garbage, man. And it's such a waste because the actress that plays her she's such a great actress in Game of Thrones. She's outstanding. What a waste, man. They did a disservice to her by making this character like that. And it's funny because in the documentaries to these films, she's always talking about like, yeah, she's a strong female feminist character. I like the actress, but shut up. Shut up with your whole pandering and virtue signaling. Your character, at the end of the day, was a disservice to strong female characters because she did nothing. And you were just being used as a talking point to push an agenda. And that's it. And that's sad because her character really should have been an awesome female character. Really. She really should have. And it was a waste. Now, another inconsistency between this film and The Force Awakens is that Poe's alien friend, the co-pilot, or the other pilot rather, he died in Force Awakens, man. He blew up in the attack on Starkiller Base, but all of a sudden he's back in this movie. So I find that hilarious. I find that hilarious. I wonder how the comic books and the Disney canon novels are going to explain that one. Actually, I don't care. I don't care in the slightest bit. Now, another thing that bothered me is Chewie. So Chewie, the Millennium Falcon belongs to Chewie, but why is Chewie following Rey and listening to Rey? Chewie's just an errand boy in this movie, man. In all these movies, Chewie is just a taxi driver, essentially. And he has no development. And, I don't expect much development for Chewie. But, come on, man. We all know that Chewie was there with Han because they were friends, and because because Han saved Chewie, so there was this whole he owed a debt to Han because he helped him save his life. And even though that's not explicitly stated in the movies, it is in the lore. Not until Solo, the movie, came out. But I don't know, man. Chewie just felt like he had more of a presence in the other movies, and he felt independent, and he didn't feel like an errand boy. He feels like Rey's taxi driver, dude. That's essentially how he feels like. Okay, now let's just talk about Luke's death, which was so maddening to me and just broke my heart. You want to talk, if you look up contrived, the word contrived in the dictionary, there should be a picture and a statement that says contrived. The death of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. This is the most blatant example of what a contrived scene looks like. It is unearned. This is an unearned moment. This is a moment that was entirely forced and didn't need to happen. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out why there was such a rush on behalf of Lucasfilm and Disney to get rid of Luke Skywalker. I mean, seriously, think about this, folks. Imagine you inherited a franchise like Marvel or DC, and in this case, Star Wars. But imagine it's something else, and you get your hands on Batman, or you get your hands on Superman, or you get your hands on Spider-Man as a character to market, or whatever. And you kill him off in the first movie, just so you can introduce your own stupid superheroes that have no fan base yet or anything. I can't for the life of me figure out why Disney did this. I mean, look at their Galaxy's Edge, Star Wars land in Disneyland. There are virtually no original trilogy characters in that theme park. I cannot for the life of me figure out why Disney and Lucasfilm want to get rid of these characters that are so marketable. Forget about the storytelling aspects just for now. But these characters are marketable characters. These characters are icons. And if I'm a business owner, I'm going to milk this shit, man. I'm hiring Mark Hamill to make Luke Skywalker TV show appearances. I want him to voice act in a TV show where Luke Skywalker is the main character. Mark Hamill, I got a lifelong career for you right here. I'm going to make Luke Skywalker TV shows. I'm going to make Luke Skywalker novels. I'm going to make Luke Skywalker comic books. I'm going to have Luke Skywalker in the previous film, this film, and the next film, and in all the subsequent films, even if he's not the main character, just to mentor the new characters. I'm going to have, you know what I'm saying? It's like, this is money we're talking about. Disney pissed away money and opportunity by rushing so hard to kill Luke Skywalker. And the way they kill him off in this movie, with him fading away and looking at the twin suns, it's like they're trying to say, like, oh, this is supposed to be a heartfelt moment. Look, guys. And I'm like, dude, it would have worked if, say, like, this was the last film in the trilogy, or say, like, it was 3-4 movies from now. But it's like, he just got introduced and now he's dead. He literally was on the island, never left, and then you think he comes back to help the resistance and fight against Kylo Ren, and then it's like, oh, I'm not even really here. I never left the island, and I die. Fade away. John Williams' music's playing, and there are the twin suns, and it's supposed to be like, hey guys, don't you feel it? Don't you feel like this is such a great send-off and such a touching moment? Look at the aesthetics. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I feel cold and empty. And I'm pissed off at the contrived and forced way that they made Luke Skywalker's death appear like. I mean, it was so unnecessary. And again, the major question and the biggest conundrum of this whole Disney era for me is that they killed Luke Skywalker and were in such a rush to do so. I mean, I just can't for the life of me figure out why they wanted to get rid of Han so fast. Why they wanted to get rid of Luke so fast. And it's like, okay, so you got rid of Luke Skywalker in this film. But where are the Luke Skywalker books? Where's the Luke Skywalker TV show that takes place between this trilogy and the original trilogy? Where, get Mark Hamill involved, man. Think about all the fans and revenue that they would have generated if they had really taken this character and marketed him. I really can't for the life of me figure out why they wanted to get rid of Luke so fast. It's a disgrace. And for me, Star Wars died the moment Luke died. And I know him coming back and using the Force projection and tricking Kylo Ren was Rian Johnson's way of being like, the spiritual aspects of the Force are far more important than, say, lightsaber battles. I understand that. I understand that Rian Johnson was trying to convey a spiritual message in this film. However, its delivery feels juvenile and contrived. It really does. And I'm not undermining the actors' performances. The Kylo Ren versus Luke scene was acted in such a great fashion. The performances that that Adam Driver deliver and that Mark Hamill deliver are outstanding. They really are. It was a very emotional moment. However, for me, I thought this was a beginning. I was like, oh yeah, this is it, finally. We're getting something good out of Luke. And it's like, just when you think that it's getting started, just when you find promise, just when you think that there's something there, it's like, the end. Luke's gone. He's not coming back, man. The end. He died. And it's like, are you joking? Are you fucking kidding me? That's it? All that promise and all that potential squandered. And God only knows the reason why Disney and the current idiots at Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, wanted to kill Luke Skywalker so quickly. Why they wanted to get rid of him so quickly. Again, it's like my example. It's like getting DC and taking Batman and Superman and killing them in the second issue of the new line of comics that you publish. Just so you can have these new characters parade around. And then when the fans get mad, Lucasfilm call us man babies and say that we just don't like women or some nonsense like that. And I really feel like Lucasfilm, especially the employees from Lucasfilm on Twitter, are really disrespectful to the fans. And it's not me projecting anything or me reading into anything. It's there clear as day. And I really don't understand why the leaders of Lucasfilm don't reprimand the Lucasfilm employees that disrespect the fans on social media. It's really sad, man. I really miss the George Lucas era of Star Wars. It was very family orientated, it was wholesome, and it was so much more positive. The vibes were more positive. And I miss it, man. I miss George Lucas. And again, the way that they killed Luke Skywalker, it was sad, man. And it was totally forced and totally contrived. Now, don't get me wrong. There were some good things about this confrontation between Luke and Kylo Ren. I'm not going to call it a duel because it was not a duel. And initially I was so pissed off about this. It's the only Star Wars film in the main saga that doesn't end with a lightsaber battle. But in retrospect, I appreciate Rian Johnson's attempt to do something different. And like I've said, he was trying to go for the spiritual. So this confrontation between Luke and Kylo Ren is the perfect example of what Yoda said in Empire Strikes Back, using the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. And I can understand why the people that like this film really appreciate this scene. I really do understand that. And one of the best things about this confrontation was when Luke was being shot at by the AT walkers. That was a great scene. That was very suspenseful. And John Williams' music was outstanding. And it was an epic moment. I'm going to give the film that. That was an epic moment where Luke Skywalker finally had his moment with his sister Leia. A great scene. This is probably the second best scene in the entire film. I'll say in the entire sequel trilogy. And this little touching scene between Princess Leia and Luke being reunited after Luke feels like he failed his nephew, failed Leia's son, is a very touching moment. And on top of all that, it's also touching because this is the last time these actors probably ever saw each other, because we all know Carrie Fisher passed away. So it makes it even that more emotional knowing that. And also, again, John Williams' music, cueing in Han and Leia's theme. I mean, it's all very touching stuff, and it's definitely playing off my nostalgia. And yes, it was a great scene, this setup, and then Luke going out there all by himself. It seems like he's taking on the entire First Order by himself, and then the AT walkers shooting at him. You have no idea what's going on. You're asking yourself, is Luke invincible? Is he omnipotent? What the hell is going on? And then when you find out that it was all a trick, a force projection, in the theater, when I initially saw this film, and you see Kylo, and it was a great performance, man, between both these actors, Adam Driver and Mark Hamill, and you could really feel the fury in Kylo Ren's character. You really can. And when he does that attack and he thinks that he's gonna cut Luke in half, and then you see his feet slide and it shows you the red underneath the salt on the planet Crate. I thought that was blood. I mean, it was a really interesting visual, and that juxtaposition between that attack and then showing the feet slide and showing that red. And on top of all that, it being an illusion. When I saw that in the theater, I was like, what the hell's going on? It was like really a whole bunch of trickery going on. Visual trickery, and then the real trick by Luke himself. And then you find out that it's a force projection. And when I saw it in the theater, I was a little like, oh man, no real lightsaber battle. But hey, that was something unique, something different. We never seen anybody do that in a live action film. In the lore, it happens once in a while, force projection. I remember it happening a lot by Luke Skywalker in the Legacy of the Force book series. But guess what? He never died in the books. And I really think that him overexerting himself because he force projected, again, it's like I've been saying, it was contrived. That didn't need to happen. I mean, think about how much more badass it would have been if Luke hadn't died. What if Luke hadn't died? What if he was able to force project all the way across the galaxy and he was like, it's nothing, dude. It's nothing. Next. You know, it would have been like, whoa. But it's like he died, and it's like, it felt, when I saw it initially for the first time in the theater, that brief moment where you're like, oh, that was cool. It's like he dies and fades away. It's like, that was not cool now. You know, it's like, that's exactly what it did. It was like, you took that feeling, like that was cool, and then when Luke died, just completely shit it all over it. Like, actually, nah, it's not cool. This sucks. That's how I felt. Really, it is. And I really feel like Luke didn't need to die. However, all the stuff, the confrontation between Luke and Kylo Ren was exciting. However, I don't like the way that it was edited together with all this looking for the exit and the crystal hounds or whatever, the crystal foxes. I mean, nothing was too corny about that. It's not that. It's just that the scene between Kylo and Luke feels very short enough as it is. And I just don't like how it took away from that by cutting to the other stuff. And let's talk about Rey lifting those rocks. This was totally unearned. Like, she just doesn't even exert herself, it feels like. She lifts those rocks up like it's nothing. Okay, you need her to lift up the rocks. All right, man, because that's what the story calls for. Fine. Not my first choice, but okay, let's do it. Can you at least add some kind of emotional suspense in there by having it be hard for her? At first, like, really? But no. She does it like, I feel like the way she does it, it's like she's Superwoman. It's like an X-Men character that's been training by Charles Xavier for decades. It was nothing to her. That really sucked. This film really turned Rey into a Mary Sue. Like it was like right in the middle of the film, it's like we're taking off and we're never looking back. We're going to Mary Sue land. Everything's gonna happen and come to Rey so easily she doesn't have to lift a finger. And it really sucked because I like Daisy, really. I really do. I think she's beautiful and I think she's a great actress and she deserved better. I think that she has the talent to totally perform the role of a woman who endures many challenges and is able to persevere and rise to the occasion. Totally, she can do it. And I just hope that because of these films that she will continue to find work. I hope she does. I hope people don't hold it against her in the industry. Because look what happened to Hayden Christensen and in some sense to Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill deserved better too. I know he wanted to be up there with Harrison Ford, but it's not what happened. Instead, he became a prominent voice actor, but hey, we appreciate that. And another thing that I noticed about this film is that Rian Johnson seems to be taking either inspiration or outright ripping off the Matrix sequels here. And you could totally see the whole Neo maneuver that Luke Skywalker did when he ducked Kylo Ren's blade. Very similar to when Neo was ducking the bullets using bullet time in the first Matrix film. But for me, the thing that I felt was a bigger ripoff or a bigger drawing and inspiration. I don't know, at this point, who really cares? That's that whole balancing of characters, the light and the dark. So in the throne room, Snoke says that he thought that Luke Skywalker was going to be the light that was balancing Kylo Ren. He says, I knew as my apprentice grew stronger in the dark that his equal in the light would rise. Skywalker, I presume, wrongly. That's what he says. So now we know that Rey, at least in this film, because in The Rise of Skywalker it was entirely changed, I think, to this whole Force dyad bullshit. But in this film, Snoke says that because Kylo Ren was growing stronger in the dark side, his equal in the light would rise. He thought it was Luke. But since Luke closed himself off from the Force chose Rey. So Rey is Kylo Ren's equal in the Force. Only she's the light side and Kylo is the dark side. And the reason why I bring up the Matrix sequels is because in the Matrix, as Neo grew stronger in the Matrix, his equal, which was Agent Smith, was also growing stronger. And that's why you had this whole malfunction, or the way that Agent Smith's character was almost turning into like a god, even though he was a computer program. And it was kind of like a malfunction of the Matrix, not knowing how to balance Neo's power. And Agent Smith was just basically like a computer program going crazy and just kept proliferating and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because Neo was going stronger too. So it was like his balance. And I see the same thing with this whole Rey being used to balance Kylo Ren's darkness. I felt like it was something inspired or outright taken from the Matrix films. And like I said, in The Rise of Skywalker, they completely throw this out of the window with this whole Force dyad nonsense. And again, it doesn't even make sense in this film. One thing that doesn't make sense in this film, rather, is that Snoke says specifically that he was responsible for the bridging of Kylo Ren and Rey's minds. The way that they were able to communicate to each other across distances of space, vast distances of space. Snoke says he bridged their gap, the minds. He bridged their minds together. That's what he says. However, Snoke died. And at the end of this film, there's still that connection because Kylo Ren and Rey are able to see each other even though they're in entirely different areas when Rey gets on the Falcon and takes off with the survivors of the Resistance. And, I mean, you could sit here and say that, oh, Snoke was just an avatar for the Emperor, blah, 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 because he's back in The Rise of Skywalker. But wait a minute, I thought the Emperor was weak, and he needed the energy from Kylo Ren and Rey in order to get his power back, or some bullshit like that. Kathleen Kennedy never had a plan. She never had a rough draft of the trilogy because she took George Lucas's story treatments for the sequel trilogy and took a fat dump on them. And that's the end of it. That's why these movies suck at the end of the day, because they are directionless. And you know, there's just so many inconsistencies in this film, and another inconsistency that bothered me is the way that Poe supposedly knows that Luke wants them to escape. He says that, oh, he's doing this, Luke is doing this so that we can escape. He's distracting them. How the hell does he even know that? I mean, it's so stupid. How does he know that? Because of the Force? Don't tell me that crap. That's always like the excuse for poor storytelling in these movies. It's the Force. I don't buy that. There is no reason why Poe would sit there and be like, he's doing this for a reason. He's doing this so we can escape. And it's like, how would Luke even know that there's a back entrance for them to escape to? And if he did know, then ultimately he's an idiot because they were piled up with rocks and boulders anyway and they couldn't escape. Nevertheless, they couldn't escape. Oh, did he know that Rey was going to show up and lift the rocks? No, he didn't know. But you know who knew? The screenplay knew. So all this shit is happening simply because the screenplay dictates it. Not because the moments are earned by the characters or because the characters communicate with one another. I mean, and how easy would it have been to use some ADR and get Mark Hamill, get Luke to say to Poe in his mind, like, escape! There's a back entrance, go! Rey is going to be there. I mean, it's just simple fixes could have been implemented for this movie so it could have made more sense. It feels like they just went in with a rough draft of the story and just gave it the go. They were like, go ahead. And they didn't ask themselves any logistical questions as to whether this stuff would make sense at the end of the day. Now, in regards to the Battle of Crate, I found it to be generally a little underwhelming. One thing that really got under my skin was the way Rose obstructed Finn's sacrifice when he was ready to ram his vehicle into the Death Star tech super power beam, which is so stupid. More Death Star technology. We can't come up with anything else. We got Death Star in A New Hope. We got a Death Star in Rogue One. We got a Death Star in Return of the Jedi. We got a Death Star in Force Awakens. And now we got Death Star tech in Last Jedi. Talk about unoriginal, man. But anyway, he was going to sacrifice himself. And in this moment, it really felt like an earned moment finally. We finally have encountered a moment that is not contrived. Finn has finally chosen a side. He's no longer just going to be selfish and just go after Rey and care only about Rey. He has sided with the Resistance. He's feeling it. He's ready to sacrifice himself. He's made a choice. He's ready to go out with a bang and make a difference and contribute to saving his friends. And then out of nowhere, Rose selfishly crashes into him. And this action that she performs just further reiterates my whole thesis on the Rose character, which is that she's ignorant and naive. She is so ignorant. And in this scene, selfish, because she thinks by saving one man with her awful dialogue, like this right here, is so bad next to the little stupid speech that Holdo gave about hope is like the sun. If you don't believe it, if you believe it only when you see it, you'll never make it through the night. This whole thing that Rose says about this is how we're going to win this war. Not by fighting those we hate, but by saving those we love. And then she performs this unearned kiss, which just came across as cringe-worthy. Like, this is so much worse than anything in Attack of the Clones between Anakin and Padme. Like, people talk about how that is just awful and blah, blah, blah. But to me, this right here made me cringe so much because it is an unearned moment. Another contrived moment in the film. These two showed no signs of any kind of romance. Even from Rose, even if it's just Rose into Finn and not vice versa, I never got it. That it never came across to me that Rose liked him in that way. And it just felt forced and weird and just all out creepy because it feels like she's doing this out of nowhere. Now compare that to Anakin and Padme's romance. I mean, they were childhood friends. So there's a little bit of history there. I mean, their romance, even though a lot of people say it was forced, was more earned and less contrived than this. Now, the reason why this action performed by Rose is so selfish is because she thinks that saving Finn essentially is more important than saving all the other resistance fighters. She says, this is how we are going to win this war. Not by fighting those we hate, but by saving those we love. Now, Finn, regardless if he hates the First Order or not, his sacrifice would have destroyed the giant laser or whatever that is going to penetrate the door so that the resistance could go in there and capture or kill them, rather. Now that she has intervened, and now that Finn is no longer able to destroy that Death Star beam, guess what? Now your friends are fucked. So you're not going to win this war by saving Finn. You would have won this war, this battle, by destroying the giant laser that's trying to get through the door so that the First Order can kill your friends. This is so juvenile. It's so bad. Again, I can't for the life of me figure out how anybody can say these movies are better than the prequels. It is a mystery. It is one of life's great mysteries as to how people can like these films and say the prequels are not good or that the prequels are worse and that these are better films. That's one of life's greatest mysteries to me. It was just so selfish of Rose to perform that action. And again, that dialogue is awful. The whole scene is awful, and it really does a great disservice to the Rose character, because I think a lot of people were open-minded to this character. But this is literally the last act that she exhibits in the film, and it's like, ooh, that was awful. Sorry, Rose. I don't know what else to say. But in regards to the Battle of Crait, just continuing this analysis, again, I felt it was underwhelming and a little boring, and it felt like the movie was trying to emulate Hoth from Empire Strikes Back, the Battle of Hoth. And I feel like, again, they're trying to trick the audience into thinking it's new. It's not snow, it's salt. And let's just give the AT walkers a little some gorilla arms. Oh wow, it's totally different and new. No, it's not, dude. It totally feels like I'm watching a remake of the Battle of Hoth. And that's why it's boring to me visually. It's so boring because when I watch it, it just reminds me of how much the other movie, The Empire Strikes Back, is better. What is so hard about coming up with new ships, new designs? I mean, George Lucas did that. I know Disney hates the prequels, but shit! Like, at the very least, like, you guys can't fault George for trying to come up with new ship designs. Okay, you want to tell a story similar to the original trilogy, but shit, can we get some new aesthetics, new ships? Everything is just visually the same. Another Death Star. Now we got Death Star tech. Now we got AT walkers, but only they have gorilla arms. It's just so visually boring, and it's a shame because Star Wars is the perfect opportunity for so many of these designers to shine. They needed to be a little bit more original with this battle. Outside of the whole Luke Skywalker confrontation, which was original. Now, in regards to the way that Kylo Ren was tricked, I kind of like the inference that he is going to be haunted by his father. The memories of killing his father, and by Luke Skywalker as a Force ghost. Well, we all know that's not what happens because of whack-ass Rise of Skywalker, but that's what I felt initially. And, you know, this movie feels like an ending. The way that this film ends with that young boy looking to the sky, and now all the young people are being inspired by the Legend of Skywalker. So you got this kid telling the story, playing with his little handmade action figures. and he's inspired by the legend of Luke Skywalker, and it's totally contrived and unearned. But again, I understand what Rian Johnson's going for, and the way that kid looks to the sky and holds up the broomstick like it's a lightsaber. That's Rian Johnson, man. That's Rian Johnson, and I get it. And in a way, it is a beautiful thing. And that's Rian Johnson as a young boy being inspired by the legend of Luke Skywalker. And again, I really feel like Rian is a fan. He just misunderstands stuff. And another thing that this little scene with this boy with the broomstick shows is that even though Rose and Finn failed with the whole code breaker thing, they were able to succeed in inspiring another person, another young person in the galaxy, to feel the empathy for the resistance, to join the resistance, to stand up and fight. And I get it. I see what Rian Johnson's trying to do. And again, that little kid, that's Rian Johnson. Just like Anakin, little Anakin in the pod was Lucas, this right here is Rian Johnson. Now, like I was saying, this film feels like an ending. When this film ended, I really felt like I didn't want to see episode 9. I felt like, what is the point? Luke is dead. Carrie Fisher's dead, so we're not going to get Leia. All that's left are the new characters who I don't give a single shit about. And even for a brief second, if I were to say like this movie, in comparison to Rise of Skywalker, I would prefer this as an ending. Let everything be ambiguous. The Resistance is devastated. The First Order is devastated because you got to remember Admiral Holdo kamikazed and took out nearly the entire fleet right there. So it's like instead you got this whole galaxy in shambles. There's no more Republic. The First Order is in shambles. The Resistance is shambles. Kylo Ren is going to be haunted by his father and what he's done. And Luke is going to be haunting him as a Force ghost. And as far as the Jedi and the Resistance, Leia's there. And she has Rey with the Jedi books to train. The end. That's your little ambiguous ride off into the sunset. Things are uncertain, nihilistic ending. Your postmodern nihilistic ending right there. I'd much prefer that to what the Rise of Skywalker did, which was just terrible. And that's a totally different story. Now, another inconsistency is when Finn and Rose are talking about their whole plan to disable the trackers, they specifically say that if they disable one tracker, another tracker will just be activated on another ship. That they have to disable the main tracker, and that there's only like a small bridge of time for them to escape. So from how I took it, is that basically all the ships have a tracker. So why, at the end of the film, does the Millennium Falcon escape? And the Resistance are just like, oh, Kylo Ren is just like, oh, they're leaving. And then the movie ends, and then everybody's happy on the Millennium Falcon, despite 380 or 370 of their fighters are dead, and there's only like 30 remaining. They're all happy. I mean, the emotion that is shown on the characters' faces totally contradicts how it should be felt by the audience. We should be feeling like, man, the Resistance is devastated. Damn. Man, they barely escape with their lives, and at the end they're all happy like it's Thanksgiving dinner or something. So anyway, it's just totally contradictory that the Millennium Falcon is able to escape, because couldn't the First Order just track their ship again? I mean, really, couldn't they just track them again? They specifically said that each ship has its own tracker, so couldn't they just be tracked and then it'd be a never-ending chase forever? I mean, I just don't get it, man. Certain things are stated in this film, and then the filmmakers never follow up on it or never ask themselves, well, hey, isn't this going to be contradictory later on in the film? Shouldn't we fix this? There was no calculation as far as how the logistics of this story are going to work. And there's so many discrepancies and inconsistencies in this film, and I'm coming over to like the 4 hour gap in my review, and I am exhausted, and it's just like there's not enough time to cover the inconsistencies in this film. It is a gold mine of contradiction, this movie. And there's just a couple more things that I just want to say, and it's like, how did Luke even know where the resistance were? Maybe he sensed Leia, I don't know, we'll never know. And it just really sucks that Luke Skywalker didn't come back to the fight in the flesh. It was so much wasted potential, what they could have done with this character. I mean, and then people rationalized it when this film came out that he couldn't come back in the flesh because they show his X-Wing submerged in the ocean on the island. Oh, but guess what? In The Rise of Skywalker, he as a Force Ghost lifts his X-Wing out of the water, and guess what? It's fully operational. So he could have come in the flesh if he really wanted to, but didn't. He chose to die instead by Force projection. Oh my God. The only good thing about this film that makes it watchable is Mark Hamill's performance. The scenes on Octu are outstanding, even though I disagree with what the hell's happening. They are still highly entertaining, and the performances are captivating. And there's some moments that make you ask philosophical questions in regards to the Force, which is pretty cool. But overall, man, this movie is just a huge, huge insult to the lore and to the fans. And this is the film that killed Star Wars for me, killed the magic of Star Wars for me. And ultimately, it's never going to be the same. Now, everything else is just whatever to me. You killed Luke Skywalker. If you cannot understand why so many people hate this movie because of that simple fact, then you are lost, my friend. You are truly lost. Thank you guys for listening to this epic review and in-depth analysis. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share. I truly appreciate you for listening and watching this the whole way through. I really do. May the Force be with you. And last but not least, one love.